Test, test, test. Do 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 do. Chess Dojo is streaming chess. Yes, well, I'm trying to see whether Chess Dojo is streaming chess. Come on, put me in. Put me in, coach. There we are. Chess Dojo. Streaming chess. My computer is so slow, I do things on it, and then a minute later, I see them happen. Waiting, waiting. All right, we're connected. Ish. Probably to Twitch and YouTube. Greeting to those who have managed to swoop in here in a matter of seconds. Congrats on your uncanny speed. If only my computer worked. Come on, computer. Just sad. All right, let's go to our club and find our tournaments. Hey, Scotty Poo. How's it going there? Oh my God, this computer is such a... All right, we're going to fix the screen capture a little bit here and see what we got in terms of game. Francois, hi. Let's try and get a full board here, and then we'll try and get some games up. Man, it's late for Scotty, but it's got to be like the middle of the night for Francois. Unless I've got the globe backward in my head. Just working on my pixels here, folks. Just working on the pixels. I am currently in Hawaii. Yeah. All right, let's get some games up. It's not showing me any games. Hang on, let's see standings. You're in a lousy $1 rebuy. Huh. Hey, Warrior Productions. Hey, Chris Dark. Hinakaki. Oh, no, it's playing some kind of a bullet game. What's the opposite of affirmative? Negative. We are not going to watch bullet chess tonight. My friends. Well, it looks like there are no games going right now. Some people played around 8 o'clock or whatever, so let's see. Oh, yeah, Chris? All right. Here's the link to the arena for those who want to get in there and wait for a game. Yeah, I see that, Alvin. I think we can all just play in the same arena tonight if we want to play. So... I'll just wait for a game to start, you know? And when it does, I'll do commentary. Until then, we'll just blab, you know, answer people's questions about whatever, like, you know, how do I get good at chess, or what should I eat for dinner? Whatever comes in. Hey, cats play chess. Very, very well. Whew. I had another good day today. How about you all? Good morning, Owl. Good morning. Do. Wow, I would almost call my computer unresponsive. It's incredible how slowly it does anything. You were ski racing in the summer, Chris, or am I getting something confused? Skiing in the summer? Hinakaki, Alvin Cruz? You know her? She was in the tournament here. Hinata Kakishima. Louis Vuitton Fan Club, Chess Dojo Club. You live in New Zealand. Okay, and in New Zealand, it's winter right now, huh? You met her last week and played her in the dojo tournament this week. That's super cool. Hey, Alan. Oh, we got a game started here. We got a dojo game. So I'm going to click to it. It's Eskiss Kaz against Zack on track. So Zack on track gets a chance to play against a master today. That'll be some exciting experience for Zack. Let's see how Zack handles it. Bring out the pieces very, very fluidly here, not worrying about pawn structure in the center. No c6s, no e6, just ignoring the supposed pressure of white. White goes queen b3, threatening b7. And there's a threat for you. So here's some chess wisdom. Alan, you might already know this. But when the bishop comes out very early in these queen's gambits, the move queen b3 can often put tremendous pressure. It's a natural reaction to that bishop moving outside the pawn chain. And the b6 move is quite undesirable when someone plays queen b3 because it tends to weaken the light squares on this side here when the bishop has sort of pseudo-committed somewhere else. Now here black hasn't played e6, so the bishop might be able to get back and cover some of these squares, right? But in general, when white plays queen b3, the most desirable response is queen b6. Not possible here. Sometimes the most desirable response is something like knight c6 with the idea of just sacking the pawn and developing all your pieces, you know? Just like a beast. And you go after this, and you get rook b8 and stuff. However, that requires a little more development, right? Like your e-pawn has to have moved at least. Here, it just looks like I'm hanging pieces, and people are like, what is he talking about with this knight c6, knight b4? But in a well-developed position, that's sometimes, if this e-pawn were on e6, that would sometimes be a pattern that you rather give a pawn and develop a bunch of pieces than play a bad move defending b7, right? So then, okay, queen c7 is often a move, but in this position, my guess would be that Zack on track's best move would be knight BD7 maybe, like Dabo's saying? I don't know. Oh, that's super cool, Alvin. Thank you for bringing another cool player to the dojo. I appreciate that very much, Alvin. Not only that, she's got one of the better names possible, Hinata. Knight BD7 offers either of these pawns as a sacrifice. Queen C8 sacrifices this pawn, but then it's hard to get out as well. So if we're going to lose a pawn anyway, no matter what we do, maybe the best is to develop a knight, right? Wait a minute. There's another way, Dabo. Alan is agreeing that black should try and sack the B pawn. I've got another way. If this pawn's going anyway, let's not lead with knight BD7. Let's defend our center pawn first. Then when they take this from us, we could then play knight BD7. Problem is that they could go knight E5 here maybe. Now this guy's dangling, and I don't know, what are we doing? Knight BD7 now? All right, this is obviously a crisis situation after queen B3, but I think, you know, not often enough do we ask ourselves really tough defensive problems. So maybe this would be a good position for us to do just that. And Hey, Vevavoom. Actually, one of the sections was canceled today. So you're going to need so only the under 1600 is open. Everyone's in one group today. And the link to today's tournament I'm going to send right now. It's this Arena 4329831. Okay, so we're asking ourselves a really, really tough defensive question here. What should black do in this position? And I have an idea. A weird idea. And by the way, I think this is often how problem solving works. You start with the most plausible solutions, and as the most plausible solutions don't work, you push yourself to be more and more creative to try and find like any solution, or even like a not very good solution, right? Because the position you're willing to accept is getting worse and worse, right? Like at first you're looking for a position that's equal, and then you're like, well, I can't find a position that's equal. Then you're looking, well, can I find a position where I'm a little bit worse? And at some point you're like, can I find a position where I'm only down a pawn, but I'm not down a pawn plus my position sucks, right? Okay, here's what my creativity is telling me to do. To take on F3, leaving B7 undefended. Now, if white takes back normally on F3, I think we might be in the game with something like knight C6 developing, because this pawn's now pretty isolated. I don't think that black's going to be better. You know, black might still be a bit worse, but let's say it has the feeling of being better than the positions we've looked at so far. So one of the big dangers with bishop F3 is the move queen B7, going after this. Now we have two choices. We could take on C4, or we could play knight B7. Initially, I'd been planning this move, maybe just because it's fancy and I was feeling like creativity was needed. I wanted to draw the queen back and then play knight BD7, right? And you'll be amazed to note that black is not currently down a pawn, right? You'd be like, wow, David, bravo. Where did you come up with this, right? That's very, very creative. But now I'm thinking that after DC4, white can take with this pawn. The knight, the rook, is still a situation. And then if I go knight BD7 after bishop C4, I am still down a pawn, and my light squares are kind of bad. Maybe I can do a little bit better. Can I go for queen D5? There's queen C8, right? Oof. I got queen here. I'm not mated yet. d takes c4 sucks, right? Yeah. So we're looking at best at a situation like this. This is down a full pawn for black. But there's like a tiny little hope with that isolated d pawn, right? Knight c6. Queen takes d8, similar double, could be done as well. So, I think instead of playing the super fancy d takes c4 move, which Francois just said sucks correctly, I think we do a little bit better by just accepting knight bd7 at this point, probably, right? Then here, taking develops the bishop. Rook b8, white just takes the a pawn from me, I think. So I think now we just have to develop. And I think this, I've got a feeling this is the very best position we're going to get for black here. And if you point out that black's down a full pawn, yes. If you point out that white has the bishop pair, yes. But I think this is the best we can get. That's my feeling. At least we're going to get a harmonious development for black. Francois, do you prefer e6 several moves ago instead of bishop takes f3? You think it's better off to just go e6 at this point and then knight e5 and something or other from here? No, okay, there's some kind of a lag. And you agree with trading on f3 so that we don't allow knight e5, right? Then, whoops, then white's going to go queen b7. We're simply going to play knight bd7 now. White's going to take, and then we'll play e6. And this is the best we can get. All right. Yeah. Francois and I are at least in agreement on this. So it's a really tough call. Zack plays b6, and the master hits him with knight e5. And now, to Zack's credit, he brought the bishop back to try and control those weak light squares, which is quite clever. cd5. Oof. White has queen d5 now, right? Black has queen d5 now? Oh, white was going to trade queens and play e4? Straight into the bishop coming out? That's not completely killer. Huh, maybe Zack's bishop c8 is pretty good. Actually, one move we didn't consider here, folks, is after queen b3, bishop c8 immediately without even playing b6. Just getting out of the way of knight e5. Right? And saying, wow, what if the best move here is bishop c8? I could totally believe that. Hi, Chess Pro. Welcome to the dojo. Bishop c8. We're talking defense here when your opening goes south. This is a live game. b6 was played. Knight e5, bishop c8, I like. Takes, knight d5. My instinct was to take with the queen there. e4 kicking it. Oh no, now it's like a clobbering. Trades, and takes a free piece on d5. And that is what a miniature looks like, right? So we see it go like totally south here. Knight d5. I wonder why black didn't bring out the queen here. Not any more Chess Pro Masters, but I was the original Chess Kid guy. So I don't know if you're asking for me or for Mike Klein. I was Playful Squirrel. Once upon a time. Yeah, this leaves like the target and leaves the white queen pressuring everything. After e4, if the knight moves away, there's queen f7 mate. So white doesn't even need bishop c4 or b5 to hurt the light squares. So here black was losing a piece already. So they tried to trade knights, and this clever check, they have to block in some way where white gets rid of the knight that's hanging on e5, right? And then clean up this piece. So now it's a full piece up for white. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. Oh, we got a rematch between Hinata and Alvin Cruz. Nice. Now, I think Kaki here is just short for Hinata's last name. But I also think a kaki is the word in Japanese for a persimmon. Kind of fruit. So English opening, double fianchetto. Black can still play a symmetrical English with, c5 and many moves. There's that possibility for black. One of the main approaches white would use if black played c5 early would be d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and then they try to play e4 and set up like a Maroczy bind kind of position. So that's like a typical position you could get. But Alvin, he's calm. He's not in a hurry to play c5. He's happy to get almost any kind of King's Indian, so he keeps letting white play d4 if they want to. And now finally e5 gets played. And white goes for queenside expansion. It is an option to immediately answer e5 with d4, right? Looking for more of a technical game. So sometimes people think there are like strategic players and tactical players, but there's different flavors of these different kind of players, right? It's more detailed than that. So if you play d4, pawn takes, knight takes, it's more of a technical player who's looking to, have some smaller advantages, open up the situation in the center, play a simpler kind of position, and press for a smaller advantage over a longer game. Another kind of positional player is going to play a more there's like sort of a more simpler kind of positional chess and a more complicated kind of positional chess. And what white goes for here is sort of the big strategic outplay, right? Grab space on the queen side, big scopes of play, bigger advantages, and room to sort of outplay in a more closed position, right? So there are positional players who prefer open positions and positional players who prefer closed positions and positional players who prefer end games and positional players who prefer middle games. There's all kinds of varieties out there among chess players. So Alvin restrains the move b4 at first with a5. White answers a3. So eventually the move's going to come through probably. But what Alvin will have gained is this rook will have an open file for some potential source of counterplay once b4 happens. And it'll be one less pawn back here on a7 or b7 or c7 for white to pressure or attack once they establish a space advantage on the queen side. So this a5 move is very frequently played, and it's often a very good move. Sorry, Dabo, I thought Chess Pro Masters might elaborate on what they knew or didn't know about Chess Kid and whether they were actually thinking of me or Mike, etc., and they might explain what a playful squirrel is. A long time ago, a long time ago, I worked on a site called Chess Kid, and we, the people doing chess.com, decided to build a site for kids We designed Chess Kid, and on that site, we wanted to have privacy was one of the factors, right? We wanted the kids to have privacy, to not be harassed by people, etc., right? And so one of the important things we did was we made it so that on Chess Kid, you can't pick your own username, right? So on chess.com, you can see Alvin Cruz is giving out his real name, right? Other people have names on chess.com like, you know, go kill your mom or crazy stuff. I mean, I think there's some moderation sometimes, but someone has to, you know, report a name of that type, and then a moderator has to, you know, see the ticket, go and look at it, make a judgment call, decide whether to, you know, delete the username or leave it. And so you've got an issue just with usernames to begin with, right? That they could be offensive or mean, or they could be revealing personal information. And especially on a kid's website, you don't want a bunch of kids saying like, hi, I'm, you know, Joe Smith. I live at 123 Plymouth Street in, you know, Rhode Island or something like that, right? And I'm 6 years old. So we decided just not to let people pick their own usernames initially on Chess Kid. And so we had an automatic name generator that goes one adjective and then one animal as a noun, right? So you could be like funky kitten or smelly moose or laughing giraffing or something like that, right? And basically when you go to make an account, it would give you like a page with 8 choices and some little animal icons or stars or flowers. And then you could click if you liked one, or you could click to see another, you know, 8 names or 10 names, and it would flash up, you know, extinct kiwi, sad hyena, etc. And eventually you'd click one, and then that would be your username. And I took the username Playful Squirrel, and I made a bunch of videos for kids on the site as Playful Squirrel. I did a chess TV show, kind of, you know, a streaming chess show. Back then we used live stream at first, not Twitch or YouTube or anything like that. Yeah, so anyway, so I streamed a show as the Playful Squirrel. My show was called From Branch to Branch, and I had a picture of a squirrel jumping from one branch to another. And so people who used Chess Kid somewhere between, I don't know, 2010 and 2014 or so would have probably seen a lot of my videos and stuff like that. And sometimes, you know, now some of those people are going to be 18, 25, etc. And so now sometimes people recognize me from that. Yeah, I know, Dabo. How are you doing, Gaurav? All right, so really long think there from Alvin. 7 minutes and 41 seconds. Obviously, you can think that long in classical chess. You just want to pick your spots for those kind of thinks. So what is he thinking of with knight e8? I think he's thinking that he wants to play the f-pawn forward and gain space. But he had to choose between knight e8, knight h5, or, you know, maybe some development options with these pieces as well, right? I think a very plausible move for Alvin that would have led to a different game. I didn't play that move, chess.com. It's not chess.com's fault. It's my computer's fault. This move is a pretty plausible move. Bishop f5, cutting across the intended placement of the rook. So that's probably going to encourage your opponent to play d3. And then if you've calculated e4, you might decide that this position's playable. I don't know for sure if it is, right? Because knight h4 or d4 might be a little problematic for black. I'm not sure. We'd really have to get into some calculations here because it's a little confusing. the position. I'm kind of believing knight d4 for white, you know? So maybe this move doesn't work. Yeah, so knight e8 was the choice. White played d3 anyway, not b4. Wow, I really thought white was just going to, you know, move ahead with this move pretty soon, but instead we get d3, and now after f5, white can't play b4. She played bishop g5. I'll just mention that b4 can't be played when the knight's undefended because of e4, effectively double attacking the knights. Oh, good night, Scotty. Sleep well. I hope you're well. Let's be in touch. So I think in this kind of position, if white wants to play b4, a typical little move is just bishop d2, which looks lame to some, but that's the explanation for why you often see it played in these positions, just defending that piece. Another option is you could go queen c2, right, defending the knight and getting out of the way of rook coordination and still keeping your options open with the bishop. Instead, we get bishop g5, very direct here from Hinata, and I'd expect black to just play knight f6 and then later, you know, take advantage of the bishop with h6 and g5. But yeah, I guess white will probably trade rather than giving time, plunk the knight. I don't know. I don't yet have a clear sense whether white or black is better. I mean, you would expect white to be better. They're white. They've played no moves that look back and that look bad, and black has played knight e8 backwards, one move. So you'd think that things are just a little bit more fluid and like the tempo's a little bit with white here. But honestly, I'm not sure because the lines I'm looking at, I don't yet see any clear evaluation going on with them. Alvin plays knight f6. Yeah, logical. Black has grabbed a bit of space without having full development, for sure, Dabo. I'd be more comfortable if this knight weren't on b8. I'm not upset about the bishop on c8, honestly. I'd prefer the knight to be somewhere else. But I understand black may have feared, you know, if I go knight c6, I'm walking into b4, b5, right? Knight c6, I'm walking into b4, b5. You know, knight d7, maybe interfering with the bishop and not clear where it's headed next. So I understand Alvin maybe just wants to, you know, just do as much as he can over on the king side. And he's like, I don't know what to do with any of these pieces, so I won't do anything with them. You know? Queen d2 would make a lot of sense here maybe to prevent h6. Let's see, I think we maybe just got a move pair from both players. h4. That's a real surprise. Your queen d2 move made a lot more sense to me, Dabo. Now Alvin just plays h6. And h4, definitely odd here. It's not white's side of the board. On the other hand, you could say, well, a5 isn't black's side of the board. Difference is if white plays b4 at some point and black trades these pawns, they don't have a king that's being opened up by the pawn trades, and they do have a rook that gets play. Whereas if at some point later black plays g5 and white plays hg, white's king is being weakened by the pawn trades, and white doesn't have a rook that inherits the h-file. So it's very, very different. It is kind of a symmetrical move. They are both pawn moves on the other person's side of the board, which, as I said, like, are often not good. But hopefully you can see how there's not a full strategic symmetry between these. White's goal in attacking on the queen side is to win a pawn, basically, to squish the black pieces to worse squares and then be able to win a pawn. So white wants there to be pawns left on that side of the board to attack. Black's goal on the king side is to attack white's king, so black's happy to trade any and all pawns. That helps black a bit more than white. So the h4 move can be labeled as incorrect. White retreated here. So for now, g5 is not easy to play for black, but do they need to play it eventually? Maybe. There's another plan black could use that also takes advantage of h4 without even playing g5, which is you go like knight h5 and f4. and you go after the g3 square, right? Because h4 also weakened g3 quite a bit. There are also plans where you go knight g4, and then at some point you have a knight f2 sack followed by taking on g3. I see that a little bit less in this exact position. But yeah, broadly speaking, two main plans for Alvin. Knight h5 to play f4, and knight h7, as mentioned by Dabo, to play g5. Kind of two main plans. I almost feel like knight h5, f4 has a lot of immediate impact. I mean, knight h7, g5 is nice and intimidating, and it's completely consistent with what black wants to do. But that f4 move looks like it stings pretty fast to me. Hello, yellow. Warrior Boys Production also asking, what's the point of h4? I don't really know. I think white was thinking... Okay, I think I can recreate white's thought process maybe. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. White was thinking black's going to play h6. And then if I retreat, they're going to play g5. Kind of like, you know, in the Benoni, when there's a piece on b5 and black can play a6 and you retreat your knight from b5 and then b5. There's like a line in the Taimanov 4-pawn attack Benoni where you've played bishop b5 check, they block, and then you have to play h4, so you have to play a4 on the other side of the board, right? So they can't go poop, kicking your piece, and then boop, taking over the space. So white's thinking h6 is coming, and when it comes, I don't want to allow g5, but I also don't want to spend a tempo trading on f6. Sorry. Let's say I play b4, right? White's actual plan. I don't want to retreat and allow g5, and I don't want to trade my bishop. By the way, I think wrong of white to be precious about the bishop, but I'm just reconstructing a thought process, right? So black thought, okay, h6 is going to come, and then I want to be able to retreat. But then you really have to ask yourself, why did we play bishop g5? Black's knight was on e8, right? We brought it to f6 with the plan of retreating? Basically, it's h4 is not even consistent with bishop g5 on the previous move, right? If I've reasoned it out correctly. I hope you get a game soon, Punyarup. And if I'm not able to see your game, I'm happy to give you some advice about analyzing one's games. First of all, don't use a computer review. Don't. A lot of people think that's analyzing it. It's not. I'll just make sure you at least know that much. Do not just put your game into a computer engine and have it tell you what all the best moves were, etc. How to analyze your game. I mean, I've published videos on that subject. I've published a book on that subject along with Jesse and Kostya. We've got a book, How to Analyze Your Chess Games. The author is Chess Dojo. But like a very quick tip would be see if you can ask your opponent what they thought of the game afterwards. You know, ask them one or two questions that you had during the game, things that you weren't sure of the answer of. See if your opponent has any input on that. And then basically think of like analyzing a game as it's just playing out moves that weren't played during the game, moves that you might be curious about, right? So if you were white here, maybe you played h4, but you were curious about b4. And you didn't know whether or not it would be good or bad to trade the bishop. One of the things you can do when you analyze a game is you go back here and say, okay, if instead of h4, I advanced my queenside plan, and then I gave this bishop pair over here, right? What's the position like? So you just play out a few moves against yourself, white and black, and you try and get a sense, do I like white's position or black's position? Okay? That's the best I can give you in about 30 seconds on how to analyze your games. It's a very big subject. Probably bishop g5 is wrong, Warrior Boys Productions. But if you're going to play bishop g5, it's basically to trade the piece, I would say. I think a lot of times people play moves like bishop to somewhere really, really far, b5 or g5, and they think it's aggressive because I'm moving my bishop to the most advanced square where it attacks something. But then if your opponent attacks the bishop with a pawn and you just trade it, it's not necessarily that aggressive to just trade, right? So if it's not a position where for some reason you really want to trade the piece, then sometimes don't put it on that advanced square, right? It's not actually attacking, it's just preparing a trade, and you don't want to trade, so why are you doing it, right? I don't know about a general rule for when it's good or bad for black to sack a pawn with f4, yellow. I can give you a couple considerations. One would be you try and okay, it's going to be something really terrible at first. I was going to say, one is you would calculate a little bit and see, like, what does the position look like? I know that's not at all a general rule, right? That's calculation. It's the opposite, right? But often in these situations, you have to calculate a few variations to get a baseline. Okay, that said, f4 is a pawn sack. When is it good? F4 as a pawn sack might be good if you've got a lot of your pieces ready for a kingside attack, or if your opponent doesn't have many resources available to defend their king. So I'd say like the closest thing maybe to a first rule of thumb would be sort of the balance of potential attackers versus defenders on the king side. I see your question, Mukesh. It's just hard for me to answer tons of really big questions while also covering the games. I mean, a simple answer is join the dojo training program, and it'll get you over 1500 elo. Alternatively, you could stick around, listen to this stream for half an hour, learn something, and gain 1 rating point. I mean, if you're 1500 and you want to break 1500, you only need to win 1 game to get there. So you're very close. You just need to improve a tiny, tiny bit. So stick around and you'll learn something. So h4 is played. h6 kicking it. Bishop retreats. Alvin develops. Queen c2. Hinata's very reluctant to play this b4 move, huh? Very reluctant. But as Francois probably said earlier, or somebody said it. Yeah, Francois said, you know, if you've played rook b1 and a3, I mean, you got to play b4. What else are you waiting for? What else are you playing for? You know? Not very closely, Drew, although I wanted to follow it, I was just too busy yesterday and today to follow it. But I do want to follow it. Let me see if I can find out something about it quickly. I want to go to news. My board just got disconnected for a second. Hang on. I am liking black's position more and more, Warrior Boys Productions, and I think that you know, the move bishop g5 and then h4, but that pair of moves was really to blame. So now Alvin suddenly decides to develop everything before playing this f4 pawn sack that yellow asked about. And I think yellow, like, partly we just have to go case by case and sort of gradually improve our experience and understanding, right? I would say that in this position, f4 would have been probably a bad pawn sack where white could have just taken it and been up a pawn, right? I prefer that Alvin develop these pieces first, right? And even here, I would probably play queen d7 or queen e7 before I play f4. But again, it depends on details. As soon as I think I notice queen e7, knight d5. That's annoying. So then I ask myself, do I really have any more building moves before playing f4? If I have nothing else good to do, then it's time to play f4. That's one of the main ways I decide whether or not to play f4. Is like, do I have more moves I can play so that later on f4 will be even stronger? Or have I maximized everything I can do other than f4 and it's time to strike? You see what I mean? So I think right here f4 is becoming very plausible now that black's played knight c6 and bishop e6. My guess would be that if white takes it, black's going to have plenty of counterplay. Let's try knight h5, going after this square. So black's going to win back the pawn in a second unless white takes here. And if white does, we're going to take back like this as black. completely controlling these squares, stopping much counterplay from white. This looks pretty good for black, right? You could try to plop your knight on f4, or you could try to go after this h-pawn via bishop f6 or bishop to g4, or even maybe knight d4. So I sort of believe in the f4 pawn sack here for black already. Now, Alvin played queen d7 first, and white traded, opening up the center a little bit so that f4 will kill the king a little bit less, but also a huge concession positionally speaking, right? Black now has a very strong center, and they may or may not need to play with f4. They may also play with e4, opening up the bishop. They may just mass pieces in the center. It looks like a very nice position for black. So then we got b4 and the trade. Now this is a really tough position for Alvin. But he doesn't have tons of time. He needs to save time for calculation. So he played knight h5, preparing the move f4. Yeah, that's a big alternative to the f4 pawn sack, by the way. when I was talking about whether or not you've got moves to improve the situation first. Knight h5 f4 looks way better than f4 as a pawn sack, actually, now that I remember it. I mentioned that earlier, right? As soon as white played h4, I said knight h5 f4 could be like a major plan going after g3. I like it much better here. Why sack a pawn if you can just break the position with f4? Black's not in a rush because white's not doing anything too killer. All right. Hey to ZJ Termination. Yeah, so we can sometimes do too much preparation, yellow, right? And we can sometimes do not enough preparation. This feels like a good amount of preparation to me, these two moves. And now, like, it's not clear that the queen's better on any of these three squares, plus it's giving white time to play knight d5 or knight b5. So I feel like here it's kind of time to go for f4, but I like the idea of maybe just having played knight h5 here without the queen d7 tempo. Just saying we're ready to roll with f4. Right? I'm not sure the queen's better on d7 because here she's going to pressure the h-pawn in a lot of my f4 positions. So, okay, I thought f4 looked pretty decent here, but now my guess is knight h5 is my favorite move here. Now, yellow, I think you're saying that you have too much of an inclination to make everything perfect. You want to play queen d7 and rook a8 maybe, and maybe, you know, knight e7 and c6 to keep white out of d5. But you can't stop everything your opponent's trying to do, right? You've got less space on this side of the board where white's got the c-pawn. You know, b4 is unstoppable. White's got even more space there. A move like c6 gives white a hook to play b5 and start opening up the rook and bishop more. So there's a limit to how much time you can spend trying to make things prettier and better, right? At some point, you got to play your main plan, which is to go for the opponent on the king side. So I think by here, black's done enough and should go knight h5. How would I evaluate knight d4 on this move? It looks playable, but I'm not like pumped about it, right? I prefer to just start going for f4. I feel like knight d4 could come later if we want, but it's fine now. I mean, let white play b4, b5, and then maybe we'll play knight d4, right? So I'm firmly thinking knight h5 now. So ZJ, you just played a 9-round classical tournament, and you've never been so burnt out as at the end. Yeah. So not just tired, but somehow like it used up your energy instead of igniting new energy. Because sometimes at the end of a 9-round tournament, you're like the most tired you've ever been in your life, but you're also like interested in chess. You're like, when I've got energy again, I can go further with this, you know? And you're like, you know, there's the kind of like excitement as well as the total fatigue. But it sounds like you somehow got used up during this tournament. Okay, so let's follow along with the game. Queen d7, the trade, b4, finally action on the queen side. Alvin opens the rook on a8, plays knight h5, going for f4. White plays rook e1, looking at restraining the center. And now Alvin's thinking. But Alvin's got a great position. Alvin's got a great position here. And, I mean, it's notable that Alvin's used 20 minutes more than Hinata on the game so far. I think Alvin mentioned that Hinata beat him earlier today. But giving this much time advantage to the opponent, playing this fast, is smelling a little bit of overconfidence. Yeah. It's very important to respect the opponent, to understand that they pose danger to you. Let's see. Goryachkina knocked out. Oh, her opponent looks very, very happy. Today was tie breaks. Wow, big upsets. Kashlinskaya and Ushenina also out. Wow. And Elena Danielian is a big name as well. But she's a little bit older, you know. It's like... Oh, and she played Stefanova. Wow, GM versus GM in the third round. Wow. Yeah, I mean, you know, times are changing. There are new young players, and the time controls have gotten faster as the big names have gotten older. So you'll see upsets every year in tournaments like this. But Goryachkina is not old, and she's really talented and strong. Unfortunately, she's gotten worse instead of better in the last 3 years, probably, even though she's so good. I mean, I don't know if she's gotten worse. She's definitely not improved in the last 4 years. She's really plateaued. She was really promising a few years ago. Okay. Back to our fights. Friday night fights. Let me move this over here so I've got some more real estate. I can see if anything goes wrong with my stream over there. Hina's playing too fast, huh, Warrior Boys? Too fast. All right, Punyarup is asking about money in chess. Back in the day, there was not enough money in chess, right? Maybe today too. Plus, one had to dedicate a lot of effort and time, and society also didn't really appreciate chess. So what kept people going? Did they love it so much? Yeah, I think so, Punyarup. I mean, I wouldn't simplify to saying there's one type of personality for chess, right? There's more than one personality in chess. More than one, you know, reason why people are into it or do it in different eras, right? But now an extra reason might be that you're more likely to get some, you know, respect or some money or something like that than in the past. But I think what you mentioned is a big part of it, that people love chess. There's also, you know, obsession. After a bit of a think, Alvin goes for the big move f4. I love it. Baymon's talking about the move e4. We can calculate that move as well. It plays right into what the white pieces are staring at. So white looks like they're poised to handle that pawn break. But we're going to have a look at Baymon's variation anyway. I would say still, if you are in a developed country, chess is a very low-paying profession compared to other professions, right? So as far as like back in the day versus today, I would say most jobs pay better than chess, especially in terms of like how good you have to be at the job, right? Like in chess, you'd have to be one of the top 50 players or one of the top 200 chess teachers, maybe, to make like a particularly, to make even like a decent living. And even then, other careers could outcompete with that. But a lot of careers, you could be like the 1,000th best at something or the 10,000th best at it, and you still make a fine living. So there's like a huge risk in setting out for a chess career that unless you're like transcendently excellent, you may not even get paid, period, much less well. Six wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. Very, very big score for ZJ Termination. It's good that you still have an idea of something that you could work on, because sometimes when you have that big a score, it's not obvious what to work on. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing some more about your games. Yeah, 6.5 out of 9 is a fantastic score in basically any format of tournament. Let's look at Baymon's variation with E4 real quick, and then we'll get into F4, because the game goes F4, B5. And now this game is, on fire. The knight could come into D4, or black could sack a piece with F takes G3, or the knight could maneuver towards the king side with knight E7. But things are getting really fired here. Let's quickly look at E4, which intuitively I would say shouldn't work. But let's check out Baymon's point here, and then I think, Baymon, did you have knight taking on E4 in your variation? I know you're coming with this rook takes F3 tactic, so it's very concrete whether or not this works. Yeah, knight E4 is what you had. So first of all, let's just say white could also play a move like queen E4 potentially, right? Just busting out into the middle of the board with the queen and defending some stuff. But let's follow your main variation first, which was knight E4, rook F3, wow, bishop F3, knight D4. And now the queen's attacked and the bishop's attacked. And black hasn't sacked enough for white to sack back a queen. So we got to move the queen and defend that bishop. So what is the problem for white if they go queen D3 defending that piece? World Open in Philadelphia. Wow, that's a brutal tournament. So that you probably played those 9 games in 4 or 5 days, huh? Hey, Nate, there is a classical tournament, or just an opportunity to play a classical game. It's more of like a place to play a game than a tournament. The term's not really... It's set up as an arena online, but it's, there's not really enough time to play a full classical tournament here. Just a chance to play a game or two. And you're welcome to play if you want. There's a link to it. Okay, so now the point is bishop takes C4. And then if queen C4, knight F3, recovering all the material, right? I'm trying to follow your variation, guys. Francois says no and laughs. There's some kind of a problem. My computer's buzzing too. You hear that? Vroom, vroom, vroom. Yeah, so it's counter check, so we can't use this combination. Yeah, generally speaking, white looks okay, right? This knight's attacked, the center's opened up, no real attack against white's king, so everything's okay for white. And ZJ did play in the 4-day schedule. That'll tire you. It's fine, Francois. You don't have to get every move right. I know you're playing another tournament, and even if you weren't playing another tournament, isn't it like 6 a.m. for you? And even if it weren't 6 a.m. for you, I would excuse anyone for making a mistake at any time, because I'm hoping that you guys are going to excuse me for making mistakes. So I'm going to say overall, Baymone, I mean, it's great that you could calculate a long variation like this, but the variation was a somewhat implausible one, this e4 move, given that there's such an obvious move that looks so good, right? This move's trying to tear open the king of your opponent and keep your center steady to keep their rook and queenside pieces at bay. So this move is like doing everything we want pretty much. Like if we tell the story of the move, right? And I know we've been having some dojo talks with Jesse recently about whether or not there are stories behind moves, whether or not strategy exists, or it's all just tactics and coincidence. 3 a.m. in Montreal. Oh, right, Francois. I got tricked because my computer was showing me California time even though I'm in Hawaii and I added 6 hours. So it's 3 a.m. Still an awful time where you'll be excused for any mistakes. But this f4 move, all strategy tells me I should look at f4. So anyone who says strategy doesn't exist, I mean, they could sit here and calculate e4 all day and knight d4 all day. And I'm only going to look at f4 because in my head, strategy does exist. Yeah, the thing about like food like Wendy's is it's not fantastic food for sporting competitions, right? Like for sporting, like when you're doing something as epic as playing 9 classical games in 4 days, you need very, I mean in French we would say sain. You need a nourriture that's very sain. You need like a healthy food, I guess. Healthy food has such connotations in America maybe, but you need a food that leaves you energized, you know? And a lot of like fried or heavy foods do not leave you energized, right? They like make you kind of sluggish for a while. And to some extent, yeah, you just need some kind of calories to burn during your chess games. But yeah, you see all that grease and you know you've eaten certain food and afterwards you feel sluggish, or you've eaten other food and afterwards you feel like peppy, right? And there's different feelings, and you also have to time when you eat during a tournament, and it's tricky. But yeah, I didn't like playing a lot of Goichberg tournaments because they were often at like far away random hotels where it was hard to get any selection of food. So, you know, famous story about Walter Brown. I don't know if people nowadays on Twitch remember who Walter Brown was, but he was Mr. 6-time, a 6-time U.S. chess champion, a very, very strong player. Walter Brown used to have a saying that he would buy a steak dinner for any opponent before a game with him if they wanted it. You know, free steak dinner for any opponent. And Warrior Boys Production saying having a big steak before a game, right? Remind me of that. It's also kind of old school to eat a steak dinner. I don't hear many people talk about steak dinners anymore in California. Kind of not really eaten anymore. But the point was, you know, I'll pay you, you know, I'll spend $30 on your meal, and then I will win the game because you'll be so sluggish, and then I'll win the tournament, etc. So yeah, so who is arguing that strategy doesn't exist in these debates? So Dabo, the idea kind of comes from, I mean, it comes from multiple sources, but it's partly ascribed to Willie Hendricks, and Jesse's been reading a lot of his writings, and Jesse has said that, you know, he's been somewhat convinced by some of what Hendricks is saying, and it's kind of an idea that all our strategic talk is just a bunch of like baloney we tell ourselves, and that really, you know, you just have some instincts for what are good moves, and then you calculate some variations, and then afterwards people make up these stories about the games, but those stories aren't really real. By the way, anyone who really wants to play e4 in that position instead of Alvin's f4, I'll tell you that this is something I sometimes consider e4. I call it a sealer sweeper. We play e4 to put a pawn on this square that's going to block these white pieces from using that square, and then we play f4. It's a pawn sack. But I'm not pumped about that pawn sack because in general I want the center closed and white can just sack a pawn back with e5 and then the pieces are still getting into the center. Plus, why should I be down a pawn when I don't need to be? So I would play f4 like Alvin. I think it's beautiful. So this gets played. Knight e7. That was my instinct, Alvin. I didn't get to calculate it real deeply or at all because of the pace of the game here. But my instinct was knight e7 for whatever it's worth. Hendricks wrote a book, by the way, that's called like play first then think or something like that, you know, or move first then think. Maybe move first then think. The idea being like, you know, it's just, you know, instinct and feel and you know, don't ask yourself, oh, the knight on a4 would like to be on d5, but that square is defended by a bishop. How could I engage in a 5-move maneuver to trade off that bishop to later make my knight maneuver, you know? So what type of foods did I eat for lunch during your OTB tournaments when I was working for IM title? So there's a very important change that happened, ZJ termination, which is there was a period where I was trying to make IM and I was feeling very like poor. And so I was being very, very like money oriented in all the decisions around tournaments. So like I would fly a red eye so I could arrive at the tournament at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. for a 10 or 11 a.m. round, and I wouldn't have to pay for a hotel room the night before, right? And I would eat like the cheapest food that I could find within a certain radius of the playing site and stuff like that. And then at some point I got the Sanford Fellowship, and I said, oh, well now, like, you know, I could get reimbursed for my costs at the tournaments. And then I started flying a day early to make sure I'd like had a good night's sleep before I went, and I would eat stuff like, you know, a lot of like smoothies and salads, and sometimes I would like skip meals to save money if I couldn't find a cheap meal before that. And then I was like, I'm gonna go, and you know, I would go in somewhere, and often also I would like go a further distance to find like cheaper food, because if you're stuck in a hotel, the price is going to be like really expensive in the hotel restaurant. These prices are from 20 years ago, so they wouldn't seem expensive now, but I could go into a restaurant and it would say like, you know, smoothie $8, and I'd be like, you're kidding me, right? Or like sandwich $11, and I'm like, that's ridiculous, you know? And so I would go walk a mile to get a sandwich for $5 instead of $11, right? But once I had the Sanford, I like conserved my time. If I felt, I listened to my body. If my body said a smoothie is like the thing that I need to get like a boost for this next game, I would pay $8 for a smoothie. And as soon as I did that, I started just like winning like all kinds of, you know, tournaments, and I won more prize money than any of that stuff was costing me. So you've logged in, Mukesh. Great. Congrats. You're well on your way to breaking 1500. Now you need a little advice on how to use it, and then you'll have to do a little bit of sweat work yourself, but you're so close it won't take too much. I would say the first place to start, go through the Welcome to the Dojo. You'll have a task list. And I do need to get back to this game because this is a really exciting game we're watching here. But you'll have like on your profile here, my computer. Can you guys see that my mouse is always like spinning as a ball of colors? You can see that on the broadcast or not? That like my computer just doesn't work. Okay, so ideally you're like in this training plan thing here, right? And then if you scroll down the training plan, you should see a few categories. Welcome to the dojo, game and analysis. I know it's a little bit cut off in the view here. No. Right? right? So you got these options. I'm not going to redo my whole screen capture, but I'm just going to give Mukesh 10 seconds here. So there's welcome to the dojo, games analysis, tactics, middle game strategy, end game opening. Start with welcome to the dojo. If you click on the little carrots on the right, it opens up the list of tasks. So there's like intro, join the Discord, find a training partner, review weekly training plans. You could have a look at this, at least the intro. At least the intro. And then I would say first thing to do, go to games and analysis, play a game, and annotate a game. All right, post your annotation. Once you've played a game, you want to go to games and upload a game. So if you go to games, there's like a little blue add button, add a game, new game. If you played it online, you can just link to it. Otherwise, if you've got a PGN of it, you can upload it, or you can just input it move by move. Put in your annotations and send me a link, and I'll have a look at it with you at some point. Okay. All right. Let's look at Alvin and Hinata a bit more, okay? Because you're going to get better just watching this show, right? We don't have to fully interrupt the show right now. Good, Punyarup. Don't click on the game review thing. Oh, yeah, you can pay an insane amount for food in an airport, right? Blech. You had a great position against the 2200, blundered and lost. Would be happy if I reviewed the game. All right, let's review this game. That's live and thrilling. I mean, who do you guys think is going to win? White, black? White beat black earlier today in another game. So white plays b6 here. It doesn't open the area, but it creates some weaknesses on these squares. I thought the follow-up was going to be c5. Breaking these. I mean, I'm distracted by chat, and also I'm not doing my best analysis maybe, but I thought the point was going to be this, breaking this whole pawn chain, right? And whether black takes or pushes, white's idea is to take this here. And black's attack against white's king is going to be much less scary with the whole center open, because it means white can hit back against the black king, right? Got threats here, got threats here. This rook can come here. This pawn can come up, letting the queen in. So it becomes like a huge, huge mess. Instead, white plays a good-looking move, knight e4. It defends g3. It centralizes the knight. She looks good on e4, but it is a little bit slower. So it gives black another moment to do something. Black goes bishop g4, going after the knight on f3. Strongly consider pawn takes pawn as well first, right? Just opening up the rook before any other action can happen. But let's see, bishop g4. It's a good-looking move. Knight h2, dodging away from it. Now the trade. If white takes on g4, then the queen takes, and the g3 square won't be defended enough. So knight g4, queen g4 probably loses a pawn for white. So yeah, yellow, those lines are going to get complicated, but they're very plausible. They're the kind of things we would calculate. So, and Warrior Boys is saying already here after b6, just take on g3 and ignore this. Just win a pawn on the king side. Right? I guess white would take. Black's, what are we doing? We're taking. White's taking. And now, who's doing something more important than who, right? I mean, it makes sense, Warrior Boys. I like your instinct that this should probably be good for black. It also still looks a bit messy, but yeah, I believe this is probably better for black. Without trying too hard to calculate to the end from here, it looks very, very plausible for black to just take that pawn. Whereas c6, right, gave white the tempo to play that c5 move. And the c5 move is messy. even if you take on g3 after c5, which yellow was suggesting, that is going to be pretty messy, that c5 fg3 position. I guess white takes, we take, white takes, and we have to just take with the queen to try and defend stuff, right? Yeah, maybe black's still up a pawn and pretty safe here. Maybe that's good too, yellow, yeah. Solve the pawn situation after c5. Oh, you wanted to sack on f3. Sorry, pardon me. You didn't want to win a pawn, you wanted to sack. Oh, because you wanted to be able to do this and keep the full center. But then this knight's hanging, so let's not sack. Let's let the center fall apart and just win a pawn. And just say, yeah, you know, my center has some weakness and white has some play, and it's a complicated position. Yes, it is a fight, but black has won a pawn, and there's nothing wrong with their position. You know, all the pieces are reasonably well placed, so this should be fully promising for black, you know. Okay, knight e4. Bishop g4, knight h2, trade. White trades with the knight. Interesting. Leaving f2 and h4 as targets. Note if black had not played queen d7. But this bishop needs protection here. That's true. Alvin trades, reconnecting white's pawns, and then brings the rook. God, I'd be so tempted to leave this pawn. It looks weak to me here. My instinct move would be knight f4 or rook f7 right here. Tactics and swindles, I think you're talking about the same move as me. You're saying maybe knight f4 here. Also, there's an approach to chess where once your focus is the king, you just bring every piece you can there as fast as you can. So that would say this guy's next, actually. So it would look like this, trying to bring this knight to h4 instead of this knight that's already on the king side being improved to f4, right? So we're going to get a similar impact, a little slower, but with a full new piece, which is really good because then this knight can still sort of trade the g3 knight at some point. Knight g4, queen g4. White could bail like this, I guess, huh? Yeah, I guess we gotta respect reality. That wasn't totally crushing for black. So Alvin made the trade and went to double rooks. But this trade here allows the white rooks to come to f1 and trade off the back rooks as they come in. Plus, white doesn't have split pawns, so they only have to defend one of them. So definitely, this was not best. So Punyarup, I thought the issue was that I was hanging my knight on h5 here. If I went queen h4. Do you see a fancy trick, or did you miss that the knight was dangling? Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's like a detail. Everything looks correct for black, right? All the black pieces flowing to this side of the board. But after queen d1, the only way not to lose this knight is to trade queens, which is not ideal, right? And after the queen trade, black still has a fine position with this move. But it's not winning. It's not overwhelming. It's just playable, right? Maybe slight advantage for black. And I want more. I really believe in black's position. So similarly, rook f7 is... Ooh, did we just get some lightning? Is going to allow a similar simplifying maneuver for white with queen d1. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's a good storm. Yeah, and white's sort of surviving. So what should black have done? Quite tricky to say. Maybe knight f4 is the only good solution, right? This piece dangling is our problem, and I really don't want to trade it. So knight f4. Alright, I'm going to check if that's right or wrong. Curious about these puzzles. Holy moly, there were two good moves. Knight f4 was the best, but there's a second good move that I didn't consider here, which was rook f2. Dang. That cuts through all the nonsense. Beautiful move. Beautiful move. So it's an exchange sack. The point is if white takes it, you go rook f8 check, and then you win back this piece. And all the black pieces flow towards the white king. This is like rook f7, what we were trying to do, right? Bringing all the pieces. And if white instead first like goes for trades here, we can just bring in the queen, going after this and this, and queen d1. You still just got queen g3, and this is not a problem now. So rook f2 is the right pace. But it's the second best move. The simple knight f4 is the best. Completely crushing without that small risk of the sacrifice. That's the best move. So we did guess the best move correctly. All right, knight g3, f g3, rook f7. And Hinata has been using their time now, so they weren't just blitzing the game. I almost can't think that storm is so loud. Do you hear it? Do you hear that? Or does my mic so brilliant that it doesn't pick it up? It's so loud I can't hear my own thoughts in my head. It's amazing. Wow. Okay, yeah, so rook f2, there's an important variation, also knight h5, right? And I was thinking that here black would play rook g2. It is nice and soothing. It's just I can't think, that's all. I think it'd be something like this, would again be an exchange sack, and we can see the king is in very risky shape. None of the white pieces are super useful immediately. I think black's plan is to move the king over and play rook here. And if white plays king h1, rook g1, the black queen's going to get h3, which would be a great square for her. So this is going to be a bit better for black, but it's not completely winning. You know, the computer said rook f2 was better for black and knight f4 was winning when I turned it on for a second. So, yeah. That's my guess of the point after knight h5. I can ask somebody smarter than me if you want. No, I was right. Rook g2 and then bishop takes h5. Yeah. Haha. All right, back to the game. Fg3, rook f7, rook a1 played after a long think from Hinata, but that lets him keep pressure on, no? By the way, I'm just realizing... Oh no, it doesn't work. Shoot. No, it doesn't work. Huh. Yeah, I'm not sure what black's going to do about rook f1 for white, you know, trying to trade those rooks. This rook move is weird because Alvin really telegraphed. His last move was rook f7. I mean, she knows he wants to go to f8, right? Why is he thinking again? Alvin, you got to believe in yourself, buddy. Go, go, go. It's funny. When I first met Alvin, like 2 months ago, Alvin was just like blitzing through the games. And we were like, slow down, Alvin. Take some time. Think about, maybe even just pick 1 or 2 moves in the game that you want to think about. And here Alvin is hesitating about just slamming that rook over to the king side. I mean, that was your plan. Sometimes you just got to follow through on your plans. Save your time for a calculation that's coming up. Slam rook f8. And then think about what you want to do next. That's a move first, think later kind of situation. But for me, I mean, most of my move first, think later situations are definitely, I'm only able to move quickly because of the strategy and the stories that I've learned before, right? I'm attacking the opponent's king. I'm bringing every piece of the king side. So I play rook f8 quickly. It's not like I played rook f8 and I don't yet know why my instinct told me to play rook f8. I just played it, and later on I figured out, it was because of, some idea to maybe attack the king. No, I'm crystal clear that every move I'm looking at is just how to bring my pieces near the king or how to pick a focus square to attack. Is it g3? Is it h3? Is it f2? Rook af8, 3 minutes and 22 seconds, of which 3 minutes and 21 were wasted. See, good time management isn't just about being slow or just about being good, right? It's not just about being slow or just about being fast, right? Good time management is about using your time at key moments when you're making a decision, using more of your time for more important decisions or more difficult decisions that have a big impact, right? And you're deciding when to spend your time, and you want to spend your time at those times and not spend your time when it doesn't change much. So here it was just rook f8 no matter what. Right, rook a1 has introduced maybe an e4 trick at some point. White will just take the e-pawn and sack in exchange potentially, and it may or may not help very much. But maybe exactly here rook e1 e4 could be played. Rook f1 e4 could potentially be played by black. Well, you could also move the rook and ignore the pawn on e4. Actually, it doesn't do that much. I don't know what the point of this move was, Warrior Boys. I just don't know. You know what? Maybe what happened is Alvin thought, oh, I have rook takes, e4. I should calculate that. But, I mean, white has rook a8 check, and then you can stop calculating. e4 also doesn't threaten anything. I mean, you should not be distracted by that. Exactly. Good time management is spending it at the right times and not spending it at the wrong times. It's a mix of being fast and being slow, right? Being slow at the times where being slow makes you play better. Being fast in the times where playing slower won't make you play any better. Just the same. You see what I mean? Like if you played rook f8, if on this move you think for 10 minutes for black or 5 minutes or 5 seconds, either way, you're going to play rook f8 in the end. So spending extra time is not going to produce better play, right? So you want to play quickly when quickly or slowly is going to lead to the same quality of move. And you want to spend your time when you think it'll make a big difference. Like right here. This is a move that makes a big difference. This is a place to spend time on, right? Are we trading? Are we coming in? Are we doubling rooks? Is it time to strike, right? A move like rook f2, that might be a move that you come up with only once you've been like really getting deeply into the position for a while, right? Only once you've tried some obvious moves like knight g6 or rook f7, and you found knight takes g4, queen takes g4, queen d1, and you wrestle with that a while. You're like, that seems to stop my plans. The knight's hanging on h5, but then you're like, I don't quite believe it. Should white really be able to save themselves with this queen d1 move? So maybe you calculate for another minute or two. And then finally you believe it. You say, yeah, I mean, it sucks that queen d1 saves white here. It shouldn't save them. I've got more pieces on the king side than white. I should be able to just play rook f7, rook f8, knight g6, just keep building pieces, should work. But it doesn't here. So if I need to do something a little bit faster, if I need to avoid this queen d1 move, you see what I mean? This is a position where when you spend more time, the quality of your move could improve. You might eventually, after 10 minutes, play a different move than you would have after 5 minutes, and at 5 minutes, play a different move than you would have after 1 minute or after 15 seconds. Not only that, the difference in evaluation between the best move and the second best move is half a pawn, and then between the second best move and the third move is another third of a pawn, and between the third move and the fourth move is another third of a pawn. So it really, if thinking a bit longer allows you to play one of the better moves in this position, it's going to have a pretty noticeable impact on the result of the game. So that's why this is where you're supposed to spend your time, right? And this is where you're not supposed to spend your time. Another place you're not supposed to spend your time as Alvin is here, rook f7. You think about knight takes g3, you know your opponent's going to recapture, you should have your plan ready. But looking here, sorry Alvin, this is just helpful for you, take this as a good thing instead of criticism. Alvin actually played knight takes g3 in 19 seconds. It's one of the fastest moves Alvin played the entire game. And Alvin's capable of playing knight f4 for sure in this position with some more thought. So this is one of the fastest moves played, and it's played without a plan for your next move after the trade. 19 seconds. I mean, Alvin could have hardly seen anything in those 19 seconds, right? And now you're thinking several minutes after your opponent's recapture, right? And then 3.5 minutes on rook af8, an obvious move, right? And the fastest move that Alvin played was one of the most critical. So again, it's not about how much time does Alvin totally have on the clock, right? Let's say Alvin were exactly on pace and had used the right amount of time for this position. But if you used your time on recaptures and didn't use your time on the critical choice between trading or sacking or attacking, you see what I mean? Like it's completely bad time usage, and you might be exactly on pace, right? But you didn't spend the time on the moves where the difference between thinking longer and shorter would lead to a different move, which would lead to a different evaluation, which would lead to a different result to the game, right? They're not the moves that's going to win or lose the game for you. All right. Chat's fallen quiet. Hopefully, that means people were scribbling some notes versus being like, oh my God, he's been talking forever. There's not that much to say about a chess game. I'm switching the channel. So now let's go to Hinata's perspective. She's white here. She's been thinking for a while after rook f8. To me, the obvious move is rook f1, trying to trade off some of black's forces coming in. Before doing that, I would calculate one or two moves. Like I would glance at e4 for black, attacking my rook on a1. I would glance at knight f5, going after my g3 point. As white, I would be aware that the weakest spot in my entire position was g3. Was that on everybody else's radar as well? Oh shoot, I just remembered, speaking of radar, something that I didn't do. Sorry, this is very important. If I forget again, it's going to be really bad. I can explain to you why in a moment. I was looking... I wrote it down somewhere, right? Please tell me I wrote it down. I hate searching for timestamps in my videos. No. shoot, I lost it. Okay, I'll have to go look for it later. I can't do it now. Sorry, folks, for the distraction. Okay, basically, I did a video that's being prepared for YouTube, and we have a collaborator who's on the video. Basically, a thing got spliced together, and when I watched part of the video, by chance, I rarely watch our videos before putting them up. By chance, I happened to watch this part of the video, and I noticed that our collaborator was saying the F word. And I don't care if someone says the F word, but our videos on YouTube are meant for, you know, kids to watch as well as adults. And I wrote down the timestamps of where they were saying the F word and, you know, other non-dojo language as I was just typing to our editor. But now I have to go back and find the timestamps again. And I hate doing that. But anyway, I have to remember to tell the editor before the thing gets published. Okay, so for Jan and Eolio Yellow, Yellow's asking, how do you get better at this? Well, like everything in chess, you pick like a thing that you want to get better at. And we've got to move from Hinata, by the way, which was bishop c3. You pick the thing you want to get better at, and then you practice it a little bit, right? You pick some kind of exercise that lets you practice that. So one thing you could do is you could play through a game with the goal of stopping when you think you've reached a position that is a critical moment. And then you can see if you were right or wrong. And you can do this again and again and again until you get it right more often. You see what I mean? Just like solving tactics or guessing the evaluation. Like if you're really bad at evaluating, there's an exercise where you could just take dozens of positions, evaluate them, and then compare your evaluation to somebody else's evaluation or an explanation in a book if you've got the book How to Evaluate Like a Grandmaster, or to a computer's evaluation, right? So you can do a similar exercise. You play through games looking for points that are critical moments. Try to identify them. Write down which moves you think they were on, and then check with a stronger player or even a sparring partner at your own level. You can just compare and discuss, even if they're not necessarily going to be right. But just talking about it is going to make you better at it, right? You can also check with a computer. Although again, you shouldn't be working too often with computers unless you're like strong enough to handle them, because you will easily misunderstand what computers say and get confused and misled by them and then turn off your own brain. But to some extent, a computer definition of what a critical moment is a moment where the best or two best moves have a big evaluation difference compared to the second, third, or fourth best moves, right? So obviously not a recapture. You're not looking for a position where like a recapture is much better than not recapturing. But you're looking for a position like you guys saw, I identified one right here for black, right? I immediately knew that this is a critical moment. I immediately thought we should go back and spend time thinking about this position from black's perspective. And here the move knight f4 is like half a pawn better than rook f2, which in turn is like a third of a pawn better than something like knight takes g3 like Alvin played, right? That's a big differential. So that's a critical moment. It's not necessarily just like blundering a tactic, but it's a moment where you have to make a significant choice, and that choice has a good chance of really changing the course of the game. So that's what I would recommend to Yellow and Jan to try. you know you would pick too many moves, so you'd play through a game and you'd pick 8 different moments as critical, and they wouldn't all be critical, and you'd spend a lot of time, right? So, yellow, first of all, don't spend a lot of time. I'm not asking you to figure out the best move in those critical moments. You're just guessing which moments are critical. So this exercise goes really fast, right? I understand in a game you would think at all those moments and get into time trouble, right? But the exercise goes much faster. You just decide, is this a critical moment or not? You get like 20 seconds to decide, right? Then you say, yes, it is, or yes, it isn't. You keep going. You go through it. And then you've got, okay, I've identified these 8 moves as critical moments in this game. I already know probably only 4 of them are. So go back and check which ones were you wrong about, and then reflect on it a little bit. Why did I think this was a critical moment, but it wasn't really, right? So what you're doing is you're just gradually figuring out which moments am I continually thinking are critical moments that aren't, right? And you just need to go through a lot of positions to start building up that sense. And then over time, you start saying, you know what, maybe that's not a critical moment, and you skip over it because it reminds you of another moment that you used to think was critical, but you were wrong about. Just like any chess skill or any life skill, right? You're trying like a small piece of that, of the game of chess. You're just practicing one skill, and you're practicing it repeatedly till you get better at it. Knight c8, the knight runs away from the king side. I do not know what the players are doing here at this point. Rook f1 to keep those pieces at bay and to simplify, right? Instead, bishop c3 with the idea that on rook f2, white wants to trade the queen for those rooks, I guess. But giving black more time to play a move like bishop h3, trying to encroach here. Or what else? I mean, I really want to play knight f5, but there's knight takes g4. I don't know what the best move is for black. Exactly, Jan. You could, and when you say find a PGN collection, I mean, you could literally go on chessgames.com and just start clicking through any random game to do it. Or you could pick some of your own games, or you could go on Chess Dojo and just start clicking through games of other people in your cohort, right? You could do anything. You could go on chess.com and just watch a random blitz game. And as you're watching the blitz game, try and pick out like the 2 most important critical moments during the blitz game. Then go back later and see if you were right. Okay, knight c8, seemingly going in the wrong direction, but it's still good on Alvin that he's watching the whole board. He's looking at that b6 pawn, which is a bit overexposed. Rook a8, seemingly sacking that pawn on b6. Yeah, you're welcome. Every chess problem or weakness has, one or more exercises that can be invented to deal with them. For example, this exercise I just gave you, Jan, I invented it just now in response to Yellow asking about how to get better at it. And it's a very good exercise, but I came up with it in 5 seconds because I have experience with making improvements. Knight takes b6. What does rook a8 do? I mean, it trades a rook, I guess, but I would have thought white would want to defend their pawn on b6. It doesn't look terminal yet. It doesn't look like you have to give up on it. So Alvin takes the pawn. White's going to maybe have some ideas with like queen b3. Like if you trade the rook, and if the rook recaptures, then there's that open diagonal. We'll see how black recaptures, right? There could be some ideas with queen b3, looking at the knight, looking at the king, looking at c5. Rook f8 recaptures. Oh no, it's not blunder games. It's not blunder games. But blunder games is another exercise that's designed to address one specific factor, right? So any particular weakness that we have, we can come up with an exercise like that that addresses it. In that sense, they're similar. They're each exercises, right? King f8 may be better because queen b3 looked mildly hazardous here, right? Yeah, c5 was a bit hazardous, but white just played rook f1, passing beside the possibility. Here's what I'm thinking. c5, and of course queen b3 is interesting too, but c5 takes. I'm going to pre-trade over here to deflect the queen from the d5 square, right? Because when I play queen b3, this knight's going to get tagged, and the only way to save her is to go here. And I need to be able to take immediately. Hey, Falgry. My thing here says I started the stream 1 hour and 46 minutes and 42 seconds ago. So then the king's going to move somewhere like this. And we're going to try and, you know, stay in the game by taking out this e-pawn. And now the black king's really exposed. And, you know, it's a fight. It's a real fight. I think that c5 move was really pretty messy for black to handle. And, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you could go back and calculate. But this is, like, potentially a critical, you know, a mildly critical moment in the game. This c5 versus not seizing that tactical juice, letting black just stay ahead of pawn, right? d5, very bold. I would normally play, you know, knight c8, knight back to e7, just sit on my pawn. Because I'm concerned that my knight is vulnerable, my b7 pawn's vulnerable, my king is on an open diagonal, bishop's kind of, I just don't feel like my position's clean enough to start a fight. What is black planning to do about, let's say, queen b3? You know? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, queen b3, my instinct is you should answer with d4. But I don't know if in 20 seconds Alvin came up with that plan, you know. I don't know if in 20 seconds he even saw queen b3 coming, much less was like, oh yeah, d4 will work after that. You know, so whatever, I don't care about queen b3. And it's not like super desirable for black either. You could think about queen b3, dc4, queen b6, take on d3, but I'm not pumped about that, right? You've got 3 pawns against a knight, but your pawns, even though they're on adjacent files, they're not actually connected, right? They're all... The d pawn's kind of isolated on d3 because the c and e pawns can't catch up to it yet. So it's certainly not what you want from a position where you're up a pawn for nothing, right? To then be playing that weird scrambling position with pawns against the knight. So we'll see if Hinata spots and goes for queen b3 here. There is also knight e3 for white, which sort of hits some spots. So that's another theme for us to keep our eyes on. That hits the bishop and the pawn. It does line you up for d4. So it's probably not good at the moment, but something to keep our eyes on. What do you need help with, KB? Ooh, I don't speak that language. You're going to have to rephrase it. I mean, to me, that's like a blue Muppet monster preparing to lick a cartoon planet Saturn. I don't know what kind of help you need. I don't know if you're Saturn or the Muppet. King h2 would be kind of like a neutral move here, yeah, which would give black time to probably trade on c4, just like you say, Baymon. I think that's what black would probably want to go for. And I think you'll find that queen g6 doesn't produce tons of counterplay there, because black has moves like queen e6 or bishop f5. Their position's almost healthy. It's mostly this dangling knight that's freaking me out here. You know, right now black's extra pawn is this pawn on b7. It's not a dominant factor. So they've not yet consolidated their advantage. Hinata spots queen b3. And I think that's a bit of a blow. I'll just mention, if the knight retreats somewhere, the d5 pawn drops. So then black's extra pawn is gone and the position's somewhere near equal, right? If you move the queen to a square like d8 to support the knight and keep d5 defended, then there's bishop a5 that looks pretty good. I suppose bishop a5, pawn takes, attacking the queen, queen b6. Yeah, that'll win a piece for white. All right. Well, Alvin found d4, but I feel like he found it retroactively, not before playing d5. But he did find d4. So good for Alvin there. All right, the chess climb. I'm about to make a video on how to analyze your chess game. The title of the video is How to Analyze Your Chess Game, David Proust Method, taking inspiration from a video I made on the same subject. Great. I'm honored. Hope it's a good video. Have you been analyzing your own chess games using said method? I'm 2100 lead chess, then can I beat 1900 FIDE? I mean, it's close enough, KV, that nobody can tell you in advance. And that's one of the better things about chess, is you don't know in advance if you're going to win or lose a game. I mean, it's possible. Like, if you mean can I, like, is it possible? It's possible. Can I, like, you know, is it guaranteed and will you win every time? Probably not. Is your win percentage chance 20% or 40% or 60% or 80%? I don't know. You just got to go to some OTB tournaments. Nobody can tell you in advance. That's part of the thing. You will have to help yourself by going to a tournament and finding out. Then come back and tell us. 9 minutes for Alvin, 13 minutes for Hinata, and I feel like there's still quite a bit of excitement left in this game. Enough pieces and enough open kings that there could definitely be some major tactical moments left. I don't know whose chance is high, KV. If you've never played OTB, probably the chances are better for the player who has played OTB, right? They have the experience. And Lee chess ratings are inflated by a lot normally. So, I mean, maybe you could beat them in a blitz game on Lee chess, but maybe in a classical OTB game they would be the favorite. I don't know. I'd have to know more about the situation to give you a precise estimate. You felt the need to analyze more than one interesting moment in the game, but the method reduced the time for intermediate players like yourself, which is important, right? It can't, not everybody has 20 hours to look at a game. Excellent, Ethical Grandma. Cheers and have a great die. So if the bishop moves away, then black can play knight c8, and the game goes on. If the bishop takes on d4, queen d4 wins for black. If white takes on b6, dc3, that pawn looks killer. for black. C5 check, knight d5 looks decent for black. I think the best thing for white to do is to move this bishop away. Oh, so you have played OTB. In that case, I don't know. See, I didn't have enough information. You gave the first scenarios if you didn't have a FIDE rating and you had no idea what it was like to play a FIDE rated player. There's some important information coming in. All right, Red Gorilla. I hope your video comes out great. Francois is saying bishop a5. Definitely a move that makes sense. Bishop d2 and bishop b4. Both plausible as well. Either way, it seems like Alvin is still probably up a pawn, but maybe the bishop shouldn't go to d2 simply because the knight wants to go to e4. Yeah, I think like a tiny bit of Alvin's advantage has been shaved off with this d5, d4 versus just consolidating the knight, improving the badly placed piece before engaging in action. It just doesn't make sense to engage in action with this piece here, right? Like, it makes sense to fix your terrible piece and then decide what action you want to take. But this is exciting. How can you improve your chess more? Your growth seems slow. You can't afford Chess Dojo. Can you afford to go to a chess tournament? I guess not, because going to a chess tournament costs more than a membership on Chess Dojo. Okay, Francois wants to go knight d2 also, like me, yeah. How can you improve your chess if you have less than $50 per year budget, is what KV is asking. Well, KV, I mean, I can tell you like the Chess Dojo method, and you can do it on your own without a subscription, without our website. For your level, you should first of all be playing like 30 or 40 classical OTB games a year, but you can't afford to go to a tournament. So maybe you can find a free chess club in your city and find some people at the chess club to play classical games with. Then you have to analyze those classical games with your opponents if they're willing to, and on your own if not. Don't use a computer at all. You can do tactical puzzles on Lichess. That'll be free. So do tactics on Lichess for, you know, half an hour a day. And then pick one topic at a time to work on for 4 weeks at a time. Okay? Oh, you are going to tournaments, OTB. Well, then you're fine. Then you're fine. That'll be great. So after that tournament, analyze the games from the tournament. And like I was saying, do tactics on Lichess daily for about 30 minutes. We have a move from Hinata, bishop a5. Knight runs away. Knight d2. Perfect. Perfect moves from both players. The time getting a little bit closer here between them. So what I also say, KV, is we have classical tournaments actually on Chess Dojo. You don't need to be a member to play in them, and they're surely cheaper than any OTB tournament you can find. So they might be an option. It's $2, I think, to play in a Chess Dojo classical tournament online if you want to get some games in between now and September. That's pretty efficient. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, I was saying that. So you do tactics 2 hours, hard puzzles every day, but you're not making any progress, right? So cut that 2 hours down to half an hour. Analyze your games, and then pick one subject matter at a time to study and improve on, right? Like one area of your end game to work on, or one chess book to study, something like that. You've reached a level where you're good enough that you can't keep improving just by mindlessly plugging tactics, right? Like you're already pretty good at tactics and your opponent's already pretty good at tactics, and so you need to get better at some other things too. So you need to play classical games, you need to analyze them, figure out what some of your weaknesses are from analyzing the games. No computer, just your guess. Okay, your guess, and when you're fortunate, an opponent who's willing to talk to you and share their thoughts. And then you pick one thing at a time to work on for a month, in addition to the analysis and the tactics. So you're always doing 3 things: playing and analyzing games, a little bit of tactics work, and then one subject of focus that you work on. Like one classic book that you're studying, or one area of end games, like knight end games, that you're studying and you're practicing. Time control, 90 plus 30 is probably a good time control for you. Haumea, you bought your first chess book today, and you bought 2 books on your first purchase. They're both by Silman: Complete Endgame Course and How to Reassess Your Chess. Are those good for first timers? I mean, first timers at reading books or first timers at chess? If you're a beginner, both those books are advanced. The Endgame book, I would say, is for players from about 1,200 to 2,000 FIDE. And How to Reassess Your Chess is for players from about 1,600 to 2,000 FIDE. Or maybe 1,600 to 1,900. So if you're in those rating ranges, FIDE, or some comparable national rating, then those are good books. They're definitely very good books. They're both in the Chess Dojo training program, so I recommend them. You picked good books. You picked a great author. But whether or not they're good for you depends on whether you're really a noob, or if you've already, gotten past 1,200 and got some experience playing games and developing your pieces and calculating stuff. So 1,500 ChessCom Rapids, you're probably just on the low end for those books, but you're very close, Haumea. You can read the first couple chapters of the Endgame course for sure. It's organized by rating level, right? So you'll see it'll say this chapter is for players from 1,000 to 1,200, this chapter 1,200 to 1,400. So just do all the material in that book up to 1,400, because your 1,500 online rating is probably like a 1,400 OTB rating. So do the first couple chapters of that book, and I think once you hit 1,700, yeah, I mean, those books will be good for you pretty soon. You just got a little more work to do. Knight d6, trying to keep the knight off of e4. White goes knight e4 anyway. We get a trade. Bishop takes over the square. The reason white comes in and trades instead of doing something like c5 or bishop b4, which would be very aggressive, hoping to deal with the knight and then get control of the square, is because white doesn't want this knight heading to f5 and g3. But actually c5 is check. Why didn't white play c5 check? Wouldn't that force the knight back to f7 because it's attacked by a pawn, and then white could get this more dominant knight better than black's knight? That seems like a clear improvement. Francois, you tell me if I'm wrong, okay? I know you... I know it's 3 a.m., 4 a.m., you're playing poker, but you might be paying more attention to this than I am. c5 check makes sense, right? There's no tactic we're missing here. Bishop e6, maybe? Bishop e6. That's what I missed the first time around. hit the queen. Francois sees it too. Bishop e6 comes from Francois. Because of the lag, we probably both came up with bishop e6 on our own without hearing the other person. Bishop e6, the queen's going to move, and then this knight's going to come to f5, right? And this, basically explains why white just went ahead with knight e4. So she goes knight e4, Alvin trades it, plays bishop e6, dealing with the f5 thing for now. Alvin's up a pawn, but neither of his pawns is like a very strong candidate past pawn. He tries to change that with b5. He's playing quite confidently here, Alvin. His advantage is, somewhere between 0.8 and 1.1. So he doesn't know if he's winning or drawing. It's right on that edge there. His king's going to be a bit weak here with queens on the board. I'd say it's slightly more likely that the position's a draw than that it's a win for black, but it's right on that borderline. Can I watch your game and give you some advice, KV? I'll give you some advice without watching your game. Focus on your game while you play it. Don't talk to me while you're playing. Go focus completely on your game. Don't worry about me right now. Don't listen to the stream while you're playing. Don't listen to anybody. Don't check a phone. Just concentrate 100%. I'm going to keep commenting this game until it's done. All right, chess climb. Also, Sensei says I'm creating content around my chess. I found out that after my classical games, I need to do analysis on my own. Yeah, figure most of my comments, figure out that I can't explain why I make some certain move, or better still, can't provide in-depth insight to why I make the move or why I didn't consider other moves. So you are finding when you try to analyze your games that you don't even know why you played the moves you played, huh? KV, when I play 90-30 games, again, you shouldn't be talking to me while you're playing. So I should probably stop giving you advice because you're not listening to the advice, so it's a waste of my breath. But for anyone out there who's going to play a chess tournament OTB in September and you've played all your games so far online or most of your games online, you're going to need to adapt to a physical board. How can you prepare to adapt for your tournament in September? For anyone out there with that situation, do some of your training on a board. When you play these Friday Night Fights games, when I play my classical training games online, which I play, a certain number of because I can't travel to many tournaments anymore. When I play my games, I always set up a physical board. I make the move, I do my calculation on my board, I play the move on my board, and then I go and enter it on my computer with the mouse. So that'll get you used to the board. Second, if there's a book you're studying, play it out on a board, right? If you're solving tactics, you could take the extra 30 seconds to a minute. I know it's annoying, but you could take that time to set it up on your board. You don't have to do that, but if you want to adapt more easily to a three-dimensional board when you go to an OTB tournament, then it will be worth it. Oh, that's insane, Yolio. Let's check that out. That's a cool idea of a super cross pin. Let's check. So Yolio's saying after c5 check, bishop e6, there could be a cross pin with bishop to h3, which looks like just a cold winning move. After bishop takes, black has two pieces hanging. Ho! Very sharp yellow. I think you're right. Let me double check. Knight f5, bishop takes f5. Queen f7, bishop e6. Knight f7, bishop e6. Knight c4, queen c4, or anything. Yeah. Yellow found it. That's sick. We always encourage people to, kind of actively participate in whatever chess stuff you're doing, right? Not just sit there passively. You can believe my advice about how to train, but when I give you some variations or I ask some question about, the pawn structure or whatever, you should always be trying to check stuff in your head. Don't just believe me. Try and figure out the positions for yourself. And yellow has been very engaged throughout the broadcast today, right? So that's a move that'll ring black's bell. And that now says that c5 was correct and knight f7 was forced. See, the players would have to have a little more time on the clock to take all that in, right? All right, let's keep going with the game. Alvin makes a pass pawn. He takes a little backward B pawn and turns it into a passer. Now, white could focus on blockading the pawn, you know, bishop b4, queen b1, that kind of stuff. Or they could focus on the perpetual check and counterattacking chances against the black king, one or the other, right? White aims, or sometimes you can aim at both, but here with the center a little bit locked, it's a little hard to play both sides of the board. White goes for queen f3, which looks more towards the king side. I thought it might go to h5. Queen d6, what is he trying to do? Alvin wants control over the next square. Queen h5, looking at the check. First glance is bishop f7, but Alvin uses the king to try and keep the queen away. But it's bringing the king out when there's open diagonals all over the place. That looks very risky. Bishop d2 goes after the h6 pawn. Now bishop f7 again would be called for, I think. Oh, the king's going to wish he never went to f8. It's a useful square for the bishop as well, just because we're trying to advance the pawn and then keep it protected there. But okay, bishop f7 looks like a very clean move, and bishop d2 kind of encourages black to find it, because they're looking for a way to defend this pawn. And this helps improve black's position again. Lollipop Cake, if you're 1,700 FIDE and 2,200 chess.com, either you haven't played enough FIDE games for your FIDE rating to catch up with your chess.com rating, and so you could just play OTB and your rating would go up. Or you're much better at Blitz and Rapid than you are at Classical, and you need to just practice slowing down, practice playing slower games, and get better at those. I mean, it depends what your goal is. I mean, it's hard for me to give you recommendations when I don't know your goal. I mean, my other recommendation would be enjoy chess, have fun, read a good book, read something by Mikhail Tal. You're strong enough that you could understand a lot in a Mikhail Tal book. Have you read all his books? Those are just treasures. Have fun. Enjoy chess and your current strength. KB, this is somebody else I'm talking to now in the Twitch chat. Bishop f7, that looks pretty good for Alvin. If the queen retreats to f3, will she be threatening anything like bishop d5 or bishop g6? No, because the black queen covers both those squares. Should probably go here, right? To make you worry about this. And then maybe queen e6 and bishop b4 will keep that pawn from advancing. Yeah. So I think queen f5 is probably coming. That's active. That keeps the game from getting too easy for Alvin. King f8 was a terrible move, unfortunately. Sorry, Alvin. It's going to hurt so... It hurts the evaluation so much. Because you want to be able to play bishop f8 even. I mean, in quite a few circumstances. Queen f3. I'm surprised. Hinata doesn't go for f5. And it looks like this may be a chance for Alvin to advance that pawn. Okay, yellow says queen g4 maybe threatens even more things than queen f5. And it's harder to challenge. I mean, I think against queen f5 or queen g4, black's probably going to defend themselves with a similar move, queen e6, yellow. You're going to be able to blockade that pawn with bishop b4, but then you're probably going to want to retreat your queen away from the trade anyway. So it'll be pretty... to my mind, fairly similar, queen f5 and queen g4. Let's go back to an earlier question of ours, yellow, about identifying critical moments. Queen f5 versus queen g4 is going to be a minimal evaluation difference, right? So that would be an example of not a critical moment, so to speak, right? Yes, you have bishop f5, then the queen moves away, right? So... this is an example of a move where the difference is not going to be huge. So if you were short on time, you should just play your instinct move fairly quickly between these two moves, right? Maybe check that there's no like one move blunder or whatever, but just play the move you believe in, which in your case would be queen g4, right? But even if I got it wrong with queen f5, which I believe you that it might be queen g4, there's a chance it's a slight bit better. But I'm better off playing queen f5 quickly than playing queen g4 slowly. You see what I mean? Like, I'm better off saying, like, it doesn't make a big difference. I'm just going to play the first of those moves on my mind than spending 2 to 3 minutes figuring out whether or not, what's the difference between the moves and how much does it matter and which one's better than the other. It's going to be, right, like less than a tenth of a pawn difference probably, so it's not worth any minutes once I'm down to 5 minutes versus 5 minutes. King comes out! Alvin! I guess he thinks it's an end game, but it's also still kind of a middle game. Queen and 2 bishops is enough firepower to really mess up a king. Oh, that's a hair-raising move. Oh, you're driving me crazy, Alvin. And now, you know, I've been watching you for weeks and I'm invested in you, and so you're just ravaging my mental health with king e7. You're too deep in the improvement mentality to play any fast moves right now. Okay, you don't want to improve your practical stuff. You just want to get deeper and deeper into understanding chess. Fair enough. I mean, it'll have its limitations if you play in an OTB tournament, obviously. But if it's just getting deeper into chess, then your attitude is very good for getting deeper into chess. It's good for analysis. It's good for studying. It's good for chatting with other chess lovers online. Tournament next week, unfortunately. Or fortunately, you know, I wish I had a tournament next week. Chess Climb has a question about the game against Pranav. Why did I reject g6 and instead go rook takes c3? Because I thought the position after rook takes c3 was very promising. I liked it. g6 was like a simple backup move if rook takes c3 didn't look good, you know. But I wanted to play rook c3. I thought, yeah, if I had analyzed some lines with rook c3 that like didn't work out or looked bad, then I probably would have played g6, right? But rook takes c3 looked very promising to me, so I played it. I played it because I thought it would let me win the game. Queen e6, Chekaruski, and you can't even go back into your hole, dude. You're just wandering around the board now. Ay, ay, ay. There weren't that many ways to lose this endgame for black, but bringing the king out into the middle of the board when it's actually not an endgame yet, but a middle game, that was one of the ways. Now it's a 3-result game, folks. Meaning, practically speaking, given like human error, white or black could win, or it could be a draw. If he just left his king on g8, white was merely groveling for a draw, right? No winning chance at all. Just nothing conceivable. But now, you know, I mean, it doesn't take much to conceive of a win for white. Let's say king d7, queen h7, attacking the bishop. You save your bishop. Not only is this pawn hanging, but there goes your queen, right? So, just disastrous here. Disastrous turn of affairs for Alvin. I think what he's on Warrior Boys Productions, he just thought it's an endgame. You can see it also from like the way he played b5 here. Right? b5. Like he thinks it's an endgame. It's time to advance a passed pawn, right? And then he's going for the blockade square of the passed pawn, and now he's centralizing his king. Centralizing the king completely unprovoked. Here it's not even to stop queen e8. It's just because dude wanted to. He wants to centralize his king because they say, bring out your king in the endgame. And he thinks it's the endgame. Bishop b4 check played. King d7. Queen h7 looks good. Queen f3 is perfectly good too. Queen f1 is fine. Queen f1 just sort of threatening bishop f5. keeping an eye on this bishop and preparing to go queen a1 or queen c1 and then infiltrate near this king. It's a mating attack. Queen h7, queen f3, queen f1. All good moves. If you had a lot of time, this is a position you might think on for white because one of those moves might be a lot better than the others. How many grandmasters live on the West Coast or came from the West Coast? Tarjan, Serper, Shanklin, Cry. Walter Brown lived in Berkeley, actually, man with head of dog. I think he was born in Australia, but by the time I learned chess, he was in Berkeley, and he was there his whole life, you know, on Parnassus. Naroditsky is from Northern California. Hans Niemann. Shanklin, Naroditsky, Niemann, Samsevian, they all came up playing at the Mechanics Institute. So that's 4 players, 4 very strong players from the next generation that I watched coming up. Sirwan, Seattle. Queen h7 played. Seemingly the most threatening of them, though there's something devilish about these retreats that both look to get at the black king by switching sides of the board. There was this player Tal Shaked. He was from Arizona, so not from the coast. He became a grandmaster and world junior champion, and then Alvin dodges bishop f5, mate to the queen at least. But then he moved to California, I think, to work at Google maybe. But by then, you know, he wasn't really playing chess. So it was more like he retired there. Any GMs in California now? Vinay Bhatt. He's from the Bay Area. He became a GM. He still lives there. Can I explain the thought process behind moving the king? I have Warrior Boys production, I think. My calculation is not machine-like anymore, but, you know, thank you for speaking kindly to me, Chess Climb. I appreciate it. I don't know about Fidel Corrales being in California. I don't know. I mean, Shanklin still lives in California. Kachian lives in LA. Yeah, there's a fair number of GMs, enough that I don't think about all of them instantly. Didn't Enrico Sediano become a grandmaster? That's another strong player, just a few years older than me, who, you know, I had to like come up against when I was growing up in chess, and he was always better than me. Anyone I have a positive score against? I think I've got a negative score against Vinay, negative score against... Oh, I probably have a positive score against Shanklin in tournaments because, you know, he was a kid, a student of my OTB chess club. So I played him when he was, like, not a GM. Since he's been a GM, I don't think we've played. So... Hey, Pondaroo, everybody's in one tournament today. The 1600 plus got canceled, so join the under 1600 if you want to play. H5. Looking to increase the pressure with bishop g6. This homeless king is just ruining all the tactics for black here. Oh, it's rough. Do I have a positive score against Nakamura? No. I lost to him in the U.S. Junior Championships. Beat him in the National Open. And we had a third game we played, which is a little like not clear how to count it. It was at sort of like a Rapidy tournament in New York. Yeah. I don't think we even have the score sheets from it, so I'm not gonna count it or explain it to you. It's a long story. So let's say 1-1 with an asterisk. Do I have a positive score against Cry? No. I don't think so. Oh, wait. Bishop takes h5. Alvin strikes back. Wait. Did Hinata and I both forget to consider the possibility that just take? Was there supposed to be maybe bishop f8, but now the queen's covering that square? Oh my god. Well, that could maybe get Alvin out of dodge. I was like, I don't even know what to suggest next for Alvin here. I was like, I'm out of candidate moves to even suggest for black. Like, I want to get off the 7th rank, but I can't move up to the 6th rank because it's all covered by the bishops of the opponent, right? And he just takes the pawn. Huh. Crazy. Pretty interesting option for white. Queen g8. Francois says the queen looking to come around and find some new angles against the king, right? Sort of d5 or b8, a8, something like that. It's still terrifying. Terrifying. I can think of a game that I won against Jesse. I can think of a game I lost to Jesse. I can think of a game I drew with Jesse. But my overall instinct is that I have a negative score against Jesse. Like, he's always been better than me at every point in our chess careers. He's always been better. And we've played a few times, like enough times that I shouldn't have a fluke plus score against him. You know, if you play somebody only like once or twice, sometimes you got a fluke plus score. But if you play them 4 or 5 times, it's pretty unlikely. Comes up with queen g8. Now everything's on the line for Alvin. Now would be a better time to have 3 minutes on the clock than the 3 minutes that were used on rook f8 earlier this game. Yay. I don't know offhand. Chess climbed the level of the first yellow book. Sorry. Is it not indicated anywhere what the level should be? In general, my feeling is that that series is very hard. I would recommend you check out some of the dojo book recommendations so you can find something around your level. Is an ECF of 1400 somewhat comparable to a FIDE of 1400? Is it pretty close? Bishop f7, keeping the queen out of d5. But she can run all over this area now. Queen b8 is probably better than queen a8 because of queen b6, right? You deny black that resource. Also, you look at the b pawn. Maybe black tries queen a6 in response. White goes for a8 though, not b8. Oy, 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 oy. Now queen b6 sort of looks like a defense. There's bishop f5 check, but bishop e6. Queen b6, there's bishop a5. Ugh. Queen d8, there's queen b7, queen c7, queen b5, picking off a pawn, and still crisscrossing diagonals. The king can't get away. King d8, bishop a5 wins. King c8, bishop f5 wins. So queen d8 loses on the spot. Yellow thinks black has to be losing. Red Gorilla says white's crushing. My instinct is white's winning. But here I think bishop a5 is kind of like an only move that white has to find to be winning. Other moves are probably not winning. Bishop a5 probably is winning. White's already played something. Check. They went straight to the check. Oh, against bishop a6, there's queen d5. That's completely over. And against king c7, it's bishop a5 winning. So this move, good job by Hinata on the calculation phase of this game. She found some killer moves very quickly here. Ay, ay, ay. Oof, Alvin. King f8, king e7, king d7. Hinata double checking for a moment there and goes for an even more maximalist move. Queen d5 was right there on the table, winning very easily. This should also win, right? Should be completely winning, but it required a little extra calculation work. Yeah, Lundy, that king move, such a big blunder. And, you know, at the time when I complained about king f8, king f8 wasn't yet losing the game. Maybe king e7 was, right? But already when I saw king f8, I was like, I know he's going to regret this move majorly. I know that. And it's not every time, you know. Sometimes after king f8, something else happens. The players trade queens. You never notice. 1 out of 10 times you play that king f8 move and you don't even notice because of the way the game goes. But I thought, you know, 8 or 9 chances out of 10 that king f8 is going to hurt. So now the king's walking the plank. There's several winning variations for white that I can see here. There's some simple variations where you check on the 7th rank, trade bishops, and then go up a piece on g7. Like here, you can play a move like queen b7, you know. White repeats once, putting a little extra time on her clock. Reasonable to do when you're winning. Bishop e4. So this forces bishop d5, and then queen c8 is mate. Yeah, that's a very good one here. If you're able to solve the first 3 chapters, then yeah, keep going. Should be all right. Bishop d5, queen c8. She had already double-checked this in advance. And there it is. So, is queen and bishop versus queen and 2 bishops. Sorry, let's be very clear. Is queen and 2 bishops versus queen and 2 bishops an end game or a middle game, folks? In your opinions. Your opinions have just been leveled up by experience, right? Would you call queen and bishop pair would you call it a middle game or an end game, chat? Alvin's rejoining us in chat after the insane game. Putsy says they always struggle knowing when does a middle game go into an end game. Yeah, so I'm giving you a chance to practice, Putsy. One way to get better at knowing when a game is a middle game or an end game is to take a bunch of positions that might be borderline, and you say if you think it's a middle game or an end game, and I tell you if I think it's a middle game or an end game. I won't be right every time, but you can slowly calibrate. So, make a guess. You would say end game. All right. Vahe says queen plus any 2 pieces is a middle game. It's not a point count. No, it's not. Mauve Steel says it's a middle game. Yellow says queens on board are almost never an end game. And even if it is an end game, it's a bad idea to activate the king. Single queen versus queen is definitely an end game. I'll just throw that out there. Single queen versus queen is definitely an end game. And often you have to bring your king out to win them. So it's not always a bad idea to activate the king in a single queen endgame. All right, Tactics and Swindle says queen plus 1 minor piece is an endgame. Queen plus 2 is a middle game. All right, anyone else want to guess before I reveal David's answer? Does the amount of pawns have anything to do with it? Mildly putsy, not too much. Francois is chiming in. It's a middle game. Bishop pair plus queen versus bishop pair plus queen. Let's put it this way, Putsy. Did you see this game, Putsy? If you saw this game, do you feel like black blundered a tactic or white conducted a mating attack? Because it is possible to blunder a checkmate tactic, even in endgame, even with very few pieces. Even a king and rook endgame with one rook each. I've seen mating patterns, right? They exist. Heck, I've even once or twice seen a king and single knight versus king and single knight with a surprise checkmate come up. And people blunder into it thinking there's no checkmates with king and knight versus king and knight. But if you believe that white just conducted a legit mating attack, right? Then that means it's a middle game. You conduct a mating attack in a middle game, right? So this is a middle game, queen and bishop pair against queen and bishop pair. And I would tend to agree with like 90% or so. There are going to be some exceptions, but essentially Tactics and Swindles, I would say, is correct in saying queen plus 1 minor piece is an endgame and queen plus 2 is a middle game. That's basically like 99% correct. There'll always be like a few little exceptions here and there where something's a little bit wilder or more tactical, etc. But basically, middle game versus end game. An end game is mainly defined by it being plausible to promote a pawn and implausible to deliver checkmate. Whereas in a middle game, it is plausible to deliver checkmate and implausible to promote a pawn. Now, is it possible to promote a pawn in a middle game? Yes, it exists. Is it possible to deliver checkmate in endgame? Yes. The most borderline and unusual endgame is queen and rook against queen and rook. It's considered an endgame, but it's got a lot of mating attacks in it. That's like the closest thing to like, that's like the gray line is right there, I would say. Queen and rook against queen and rook. Does it matter if it's a middle game or end game? I don't play any different. It does, Putsy. Look at black's king here. Alvin's king is saying it mattered a whole lot. If he'd played this position like a middle game, his king would have been on h8 or g8, and he would have been up a pawn. Right? But because he played it like an end game and brought his king into the middle of the board, he got checkmated. Do you really not play any differently in middle games or end games, Putsy? That's correct, Alvin. Marching with the king. Alvin's saying, this is Alvin's own reflection. They haven't yet watched all the commentary. We watched basically the whole game, Alvin. Alvin is saying, I think marching with the king with the queens on the board is where I lost. Correct. Correct. That was a great game. That was instructive. That was entertaining. So you don't activate your king in the middle game. Right. There are a few exceptions, Putsy. I don't know if you've ever seen the super famous Short versus Tamon game. That's an example of activating a king in a middle game. It's very rare. You don't register what it is, you just play the position. Okay. You've never thought to yourself like, oh, pieces have been traded off. I should move my king away from g1? The position just tells you to bring out your king? You've got no idea when the opening ends and the middle game starts? Yeah. So the opening is when all your pieces are on terrible squares, and the middle game is when the majority of your pieces are on decent squares. And again, there's like a gray area, you know. Does it have to be all your pieces are on good squares, or all but one, or all but two? But basically that's like what defines the opening versus the middle game. And so an important point, Putsy, is that one player can be in the middle game while another player is still in the opening. If you think about it for a second, you'll know which player that favors. In fact, one of my favorite feelings in all of chess is being in the middle game while my opponent's in the opening. That's lovely. On the other hand, it's not always good to be ahead of your opponent. You don't want to be in the end game when your opponent's in the middle game, right? The middle game is just the place to be. That's the best place. That's the best place. So if you're in the middle game and your opponent is not, that's basically always good for you. So something you can do in a middle game that you probably shouldn't do much in the opening putsy is you can like maneuver one piece like multiple times. You could spend your time moving a bunch of pawns, right? Like building up strength in an area or doing a pawn storm or, you know, looking for a place where you want to trade some things. All right, cheers. Have a good day, Putsy. Yeah, if somebody gets too excited about eating the pawns that are being offered in a gambit, right? And they just keep going after more, they can often stay in the opening while their opponent gets to the middle game. All right, we got another game from Eskiss. Wait, Eskiss was 2200 when they played against Zack. It looked like they were winning, and now they're under 2200. What happened there? See, spiral of death. Eskiss did beat Zack on track. Have they fit a third game in between? I don't know. Well, you'll see, Alvin, there's about 2 hours or more of targeted personal advice for you recorded on this video. So you're going to get a lot out of that great game you just played. If you're in communication with Hinata, maybe you can let her know about the video recording, so she, because I imagine, because I know it's her first time playing Friday Night Fights, she might not know that it's there, and maybe she would be interested to check it out. All right, we got a closed Catalan. 95. There's going to be some potential major pressure on d5 here. Bishop on b7 is undefended, so black can't move the pawn off of d5. It just has to sit there and have everybody threaten it. I mean, within limits, right? Like, let's say you play queen b3, putting pressure here. It's not like it's not allowed to move, right? No time to take the hanging bishop on b7 if there's a queen on b3, right? Or let's say white tries to ramp up the pressure with the e-pawn. That would also block the bishop, right? And then there'd be situations where black could take on c4. So, all right. So, yeah, Eskiss is going to think here a little bit, try and see if there's a way to ramp up the pressure, see how they feel about knight e5, d5. Do they want to allow it or not? Do they have to set up for it? Do they want to play f4, bishop f4? Let's see, what time is it for me here? 11 o'clock, a little bit late. I've got too many windows open down here, huh? Let's kill that. Let's kill that window. Maybe this is part of what's been killing my computer. I had like 5 or 6 tabs open. Macs aren't meant to have 5 or 6 tabs open, you know. All right. Yeah, Vahe, I think it should be possible to get this position via Queen's Indian move order. Yeah. I can imagine playing all these moves as white or black from a Queen's Indian, Fianchetto, if the players wanted to. I don't know if it's like, you know, the most topical variation or like the top move order, but it's certainly possible. Yellow, there's always like a link. For Friday Night Fights, it's usually under ! Fight like this. And like when we've got our Sunday Rapid tournaments, it's under ! Play. But yeah, if you just come in and ask people how to join, somebody will tell you as well. And the 2 tournaments today got consolidated. All right, Eskiss Kaz wants to put on some pressure, so they're going a little deeper into this move, so let's go with them. So how does the master increase the pressure here as white? Bishop f4, there's this move knight h5, which doesn't feel amazing. Knight h5. No, then we could win a pawn on d5. That's fine. So there's no knight h5. So bishop f4 looks like a clean developing move that improves white's position. It's going to be my guess. Got it. Guess the move. I was going to go grab some water because I've been talking for 3 hours. Also, nowadays I sometimes forget to look away from the screen for a minute. It's good to look away for a moment, you know? Maybe it's not good to spend long amounts of time at a computer, but if you do, within that context, it's good to sometimes look away. Let me grab my water. All right, that wasn't too long. You want to see something different? Here's another beautiful piece of art that'll be going up on the walls at some point soon. So as black, I might play a move Queen c8, defending the bishop, giving me some more options for dealing with this tension. I could also play a move c5, trying to undermine white's center and the knight. But I feel like my pieces are just a tiny bit awkward. I don't know if I want to blow things open when I feel slightly awkward, you know? So maybe I'd just dig in. Queen c8. You're wondering what opening this was, Red Sun? This was a Catalan from white. You see, white never played e4. So white played a Catalan. I can show you. My love is bigger than a Catalan. Do bop bop ba da bop. Do bop bop ba da bop. Hey, do bop bop ba da bop. There you go, Catalan. You see e6 and or b6, and you're not a fan, huh? Not a fan, son. Oh, yellow, you shouldn't feel scared after sparring. You should feel endowed with power that your opponents lack. You should feel endowed with power. I was just reading a book and I came across a supposed Sun Tzu quote. I don't know for sure if it's a real one, but it said, something like, the victorious warrior wins and then goes to war. Something like that. The victorious warrior wins and then goes to war. I might be misparaphrasing it myself, right? But the idea is that you don't go to war and then you try your best and you find out if you win or lose then, right? You do the preparation in advance so that by the time you go into battle, your victory is a high percentage, let's say. So the victory is achieved in advance during the preparation. So when you spar your end games and then you go play somebody, you beat them in advance. Before you got into an end game with them, you beat them 2 months ago when you sparred the end game. Good night, Francois. I wish you a good weekend. It's not 100% true, right? Because you can do all the prep in the world. I mean, this stuff has, like, you know, wisdom to it, but it's percentages, right? It's percentages, right? You could do great prep, and then, you know, so there's all kinds of reasons that an accident could happen, or there could be an exception to the better prepared player winning. Also, what if your opponent prepared just as much as you? Then great, you did all your preparation, but it's actually still 50-50, right? All right, howdy, Michigan. All right. Black has played rook b8, defending this bishop, in some ways similar to the move queen c8. The difference is that if black takes on c4 at some point and white trades bishops, the black rook on b7 is going to do a very poor, evocative of bathroom words, but a very poor job of defending the queenside light squares. Whereas a black queen recapturing on b7 would be perfection. I demonstrate. Boop. 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 Light squares. They are not secure. Rook. Trapped. Queen. Trapped in here dealing with this thingy, right? So, maybe queen a4 next from white, right? Supporting the knight. Threatening queen a6. Now, let's show a comparable line. Queen c8. Rook c1. Boop. Boop. Goddess, right? Goddess on b7. Best square she could be on. And we're not really feeling this weakness so much because we've got a fianchettoed bishop rook goddess, right? White might be feeling the light squares a little bit on this side of the board, since they don't have anybody fianchettoed there. But if you could put the white rook on g2, it wouldn't help. So we get rook b8. And look at this. Eskiss Kaz has played rook c1. Like in my variation. Would I be going after the GM title? Nah. Falgary, we just did a whole dojo talk on it, which I don't think has been published yet. But since I don't care about spoiling things, I don't agree with Jesse on it. I don't know in what detail it's useful for me to lay out how useful it is for me to paraphrase an argument that we had in the past that will be published in the future. Oh, you watched a stream of his. Okay. Cool. In which he was talking about our conversation, I guess. The upcoming talk. Yeah, the Slav does kind of nip the Catalan. I'm enjoying playing chess, which I think matters, and I'm striving to improve some areas of my game, which I don't know if that matters, but I enjoy it, so in that sense it matters. Why would white trade the bishops? Why not play e4 after d takes c? Gotcha. Yeah, white might not want to trade here, indeed. Hi, Skibix. Let's say we got d takes c4. Would white not just play e4? Maybe. They could. But they're risking maybe not recovering this pawn then, right? Depending on what black does. Yeah, I see b5. Knight b5 is a real mess. Hard to assess. You mean our tests, Alvin Cruz? Like a tactics test on the Chess Dojo site? I mean, what I do, Skibix, to deal is something that I set up in advance of every tournament. I have a goal of usually I have two goals of something specific that I'm working on. And whether I win or lose, it's something that I can keep working on. So that keeps me focused on what I'm working on. It's related in general to what I was working on between tournaments, right? When I was preparing. And I've got a goal, let's say to keep my cool when I'm low on time, or to avoid time trouble, or to keep my cool when I get surprised, or to defend better, or to attack better, or to be more willing to trade into an endgame if I think it's good for me, even though I used to be reluctant at the endgames, or it could be the opposite, to be more willing to make a sack if I think it should be good, even though in the past, even if I think it's good, I might have been afraid to make it. I always have some like X's and O's that I focus on in my training, and I've got a goal related to that in the tournament. So win or lose, that's what I focus on in my round 8 game or my round 9 game, whether my score is 6-1 or 1-6 or whatever it might be. Yeah, the tests are different than tactics you might have done. Yeah, than tactics you have done anywhere else. The way our tests work, they will give you an honest and accurate assessment of your tactical level, unlike maybe any other tactical puzzly kind of things that I know of. Right? They won't tell you that you're 2,900 or whatever. Okay, you've got a goal not to lose with white. Do you have anything specific about how to avoid losing with white? Like, are you trying to draw with white, or keep the position simple with white, or be less aggressive in the... Like, is there anything about, like, your opening play that you're trying to change? Do you play over-aggressively with white normally? You get too greedy, trying to achieve too much? Or what? Yeah, Red Sun, I agree. It looks hard for black to hold this pawn or create like a big old problem for white. But maybe they could trade the knight that's threatening the pawn at the moment, right? And now big choice for white between pawn and bishop. The bishop takes, then black potentially has time to play a6, stopping knight b5, and then, you know, b5 and actually hold the pawn. There's other options as well. But that's like the most obvious thing black might be up to here. Then there's de5. This looks pretty promising for white. This de5 looks much stronger, right? But there is knight c5 there. I want to get rook d1. Maybe I should just try to recover my pawn here and not go too crazy. Could also try queen g4, ambitious in a different way. I think I'm going to reject queen a4 because of knight c5, right? Queen a7, rook a8, or even queen here, bishop a6. It doesn't feel right. It looks very like active for black. So let's try queen g4. If I can get rook d1 quickly, I can get a nice position for white, is my thought. It's a pretty exciting position. I mean, black could consider knight c5. It's so important, you know. Allow bishop h6, play g6, be ready to answer rook d1 with knight d3, right? White can take here, take back, h4. Maybe I should take with the queen. She's not doing me many favors on the d file. This amazing piece, this, bishop c5, weak dark squares. I don't know. It's very, very sharp because black has to consider moves like knight c5 if they want to come out with a good position, you know. Something like king h8, rook d1. It's unpleasant. It's a fair amount of pressure there. Hard to organize things. Anyway, in summary, somebody asked, you know, if black takes on c4, could white play with e4? They could. It may or may not be good. It's going to hinge on some specifics and some tricky variations. In the game, we get this rook on b7. Knight c6. Queen, exact position we talked about. Knight e7. Here I'd looked at queen a4, but we hadn't looked very hard past this point. Knight b5. Knight b5. Back here. They threaten c7 and c4 at once, and if the c pawn moves, there's bishop d6. But that's really selling your advantage short, Eskiss, in my opinion. Trading this knight on c6. Whew. I mean, you could even, in this position as white... Did my stream just die? Hang on one second. No, it should be okay. What's going on? Twitch thinks it restarted the stream. What does YouTube think? Still live? YouTube is still live, it looks like. Okay. White could even just play e4, d5, you know, just to support that knight and keep it there. This rook is basically trapped till kingdom come. He's just stuck. Even if my queen a4 move is somehow bad here, even if knight b5 is bad here, this knight is really good here. So, trades it off. And black's back in the game. The rook on b7 still makes a hideous impression, but black's back in the game. Maybe the best move here is c5. My first instinct, I'm so passive sometimes and so aggressive other times. My first instinct was knight f6, kind of defending c7. Maybe I could come to d5 and defend it more, play rook c8. What about just launch that thing, get rid of it? And it's only occurred to me when I was like, well, I have to get the rook out of b7 at some point. c5. That'll get you a game, Devder. Yeah. Devder is using their time nicely. 30 minutes out of 45 here in the middle game. That's good. If you're a real beginner to time management, you know, you might want to use approximately 30% of your time in the opening, 40% in the middle game, and 30% in the end game. It's a real rough rule of thumb for somebody who's really new to time management. But, so in general, Devder's time is kind of on pace for that. That said, I really hated that one move, that rook b8 move, right? I'm looking forward, starting to look forward to going to bed. I mean, again, like, time management is more specifically about how much of your time do you spend on important decisions than you know, do you spend your time on the opening, middle game, or end game. And in advanced time management, you need to constantly be adjusting how you use your time based on how complicated or simple the game appears to be, etc., right? But yes, 20, 50, 30 would be plausible as well. No move yet. This is just my recommendation here, the c5 thing. Oh man, yeah, 11:30 is late enough. I should go get myself to bed, honestly. We'll just wait to see one more move from black. We'll evaluate it, and then I will get some rest. Okay, Queen H4 was played. Wow, after 9 minutes. Okay, so a very aggressive move. Looking at the pawn on F4 and the white king side, The obvious move for white would be e3, and Eskiss did play that in 6 seconds after black thought for 9 minutes, which is insane. If your opponent thinks that long, you can't be answering in 6 seconds unless it's like a recapture or something. And even then, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to play that fast when your opponent's played that slow. You're just so likely to be missing something. But I'm certainly missing it as well, what the point of queen h4 was. And it's been more than 6 seconds now. It looks like there's no other black piece that's getting to this area quickly, right? Both rooks are just far, far away. The white queen can come here as needed. White's got more pieces in the game. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Exactly. Queen f3 is coming and it's going to be very strong at this point. Hardly any move that queen f3 is not good against. So, yeah, queen h4 was pretty unfortunate choice from Devder, and the position is going to deteriorate very, very much from this trade of moves. All right, my friends, I'm sorry, but as always, the time eventually comes when we must part. So we're going to send a raid over to Chess Heroes. And I'll see you all again on potentially Sunday for our rapid tournament, or otherwise at some other time. Best wishes to one and all.